Good evening. Perhaps you've been searching for something that feels just out of reach. Perhaps you've tried to force happiness, only to watch it slip away like water through your fingers. Perhaps you're tired of the endless pursuit, the constant striving, the belief that joy lives somewhere in the future. Tonight we explore joy and happiness through the lens of ancient Buddhist wisdom. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. Through 20 stories drawn from monasteries and mountain villages, from bustling markets and quiet hermitages, we'll discover that true happiness was never hiding in achievement or possession. It was always here, waiting in the simplest moments, in the smallest gestures, in the space between one breath and the next. Take a slow breath in. Feel the air filling your lungs. Breathe out slowly, releasing any tension you've been carrying. Let your shoulders drop just a little. Let your jaw soften. You are exactly where you need to be. If you're here because you've been chasing happiness without catching it, because you've tried everything and still feel empty, because you wonder if joy is even possible for you, these stories hold you. These teachings have guided millions through similar darkness into unexpected light. These are not new solutions, but ancient truths, tested by centuries, proven by countless lives transformed. From Japanese Zen masters to Chinese Chan hermits, from Tibetan monks to Vietnamese village teachers, this wisdom has endured because it works, because it's real, because it points to something that doesn't change even when everything changes. Let yourself settle now. Let the day fall away. Tonight there is nowhere else you need to be. No problem that needs solving right now. Just these stories, your breath, and this gentle unfolding of timeless wisdom. Rest as we begin our journey together. The monk who laughed at his own funeral. In a mountain monastery in northern Japan, there lived a monk named Ryokan who was known throughout the region not for his scholarship or his austerity, but for his laughter. His laugh was a deep, rolling sound that seemed to come from somewhere in his belly, genuine and uninhibited as a child's. The other monks found it somewhat unseemly. A spiritual teacher, they believed, should maintain proper dignity. Ryokan was 73 years old when he fell ill. The sickness came on suddenly, weakening his body but leaving his mind perfectly clear. The abbot and senior monks gathered around his bedside, their faces solemn with concern. They expected him to be afraid, or at least appropriately serious about his impending death. Instead, Ryokan looked at their grave faces and began to chuckle. "Why do you laugh?" the abbot asked, somewhat offended. Ryokan's eyes sparkled. "I'm imagining my funeral," he said. "All of you standing there with such serious faces, pretending I was always proper and dignified. Someone will probably say I was wise and contemplative, and I'll be lying there in my best robes, finally behaving exactly as you always wished I would." He laughed harder. "The joke is, I had to die to make you happy with my behavior." The monks didn't know what to say. This seemed wildly inappropriate. But Ryokan wasn't finished. "Do you know what I've been thinking about?" he asked. "I've been remembering the time I tried to catch that frog in the meditation hall, and I slipped and knocked over the water basin. Remember? Everyone was furious. I was soaking wet. The frog escaped, and I laughed so hard I couldn't apologize properly." He smiled at the memory. "That was a good day." "Master," one of the younger monks ventured, "aren't you afraid? Death is coming." Ryokan looked at him with such kindness. "Death is always coming," he said. "It's been coming since the day I was born. Should I have spent all these years afraid? Or should I have spent them laughing at frogs and slipping on wet floors and enjoying the taste of rice and the sight of cherry blossoms? He paused, his breathing labored, but his expression peaceful. I'll tell you a secret, he said, his voice softer now. Happiness isn't something you achieve or attain. It's not a reward for being good enough, or wise enough, or spiritual enough. It's just noticing. Noticing the frog. Noticing the wetness of the water. Noticing the sound of your own laughter echoing off temple walls. Over the next 3 days, as Ryokan grew weaker, something remarkable happened. The monks who visited him found themselves smiling despite their grief. He would comment on the quality of the afternoon light, or the particular song of a bird outside his window, or the way the tea they brought him was exactly the right temperature. He found something to appreciate in every moment, even the difficult ones. This pain in my chest, he said on the second day, is quite interesting when you really pay attention to it. It comes and goes like waves. I never noticed that before. You have to be quite still to observe it properly. The young monk who had asked about fear sat with him during the final night. Master, he whispered, I still don't understand. How can you be happy while dying? Ryokan's eyes were closed, but he smiled. I'm not happy while dying, he said. I'm happy while living. I'm still alive. You see, right now, in this moment, I'm breathing. I can hear your voice. I can feel the warmth of this blanket. That's not dying. That's living. When I'm actually dead, I won't know the difference. So why worry about it now? He died just before dawn. And according to the monk who was with him, his last words were, Listen, the morning birds. And he smiled. At his funeral, the abbot gave a traditional eulogy about Ryokan's dedication to practice and his years of service. But halfway through, he stopped. He looked at all the serious faces, at the perfectly arranged flowers, at the formal atmosphere, and he said, This is exactly what Ryokan predicted. We're all being terribly serious and proper, and he would find it hilarious. The abbot did something unprecedented. He laughed. It started as a small chuckle, but it grew, and soon several other monks were laughing too, remembering Ryokan's joy, his delight in simple things, his absolute refusal to take himself too seriously. From that day forward, that monastery became known as a place of joy. The monks still practiced diligently, still meditated for hours, still maintained their discipline, but they also laughed more freely. They noticed the frogs and the birds and the particular quality of morning light. They understood that Ryokan's final teaching wasn't about death at all. It was about fully, completely, joyfully being alive. This story reminds us that happiness isn't something we postpone until conditions are perfect. Ryokan was dying, facing the end of his life, and he was still finding joy in the song of morning birds. He wasn't denying his death. He wasn't pretending everything was fine. He was simply choosing to notice what was actually happening in each moment, rather than what he feared might happen in the future. How often do we do the opposite? We're healthy, but we're anxious about potentially getting sick. We're employed, but we're worried about possibly losing our job. We're safe, but we're imagining all the ways we might not be. We miss the actual experience of being alive because we're so busy rehearsing for disasters that haven't happened. Ryokan shows us a different way. When someone cuts us off in traffic and we're still angry about it hours later, we're not experiencing that present moment. We're replaying a past moment over and over. when we're scrolling through social media comparing our lives to others, feeling inadequate. We're not present with our actual life. We're lost in imagination and comparison. True happiness, Ryokan teaches, is noticing. Just noticing. The taste of your morning coffee, the warmth of water in the shower, the particular color of the sky today, the sound of your own breathing. These aren't small things. These are your life, moment by moment, breath by breath. We often think happiness will come when we get the promotion, when we lose the weight, when we find the relationship, when we finally achieve whatever goal we're chasing. But Ryokan laughed at frogs and slipped on wet floors and found joy in his own dying. He found it not because he achieved anything, but because he noticed everything. What if happiness isn't out there waiting to be found? What if it's right here, in this moment, in the simple fact of being alive? What if joy is available right now, in the feeling of the blanket against your skin, in the rise and fall of your breath, in the particular silence or sound of this very moment? Notice how Ryokan's final words were, listen. The morning birds. Not a profound philosophical statement. Not a summary of Buddhist doctrine. Just an invitation to notice what was actually happening. The birds were singing. That was enough. That was everything. Perhaps you might consider, just for tonight, letting go of the pursuit, letting go of the chase, simply noticing what's here. The weight of your body against the bed, the temperature of the air, the particular quality of the darkness. This is your life, happening right now, not in the future, not when things get better, right now. Just this, and just this might be exactly enough. Let your breath become soft and easy. Notice the gentle rise and fall of your chest. Let each exhale carry away whatever weight you've been holding. There's no hurry, no rush, just rest. Another story finds you now. The baker who made terrible bread. In a small village in southern China, there was a baker named Chen who made the worst bread anyone had ever tasted. It was dense as stone, flavorless as cardboard, and had a texture that somehow managed to be both dry and sticky at the same time. Everyone in the village knew this. Everyone had tried his bread at least once and vowed never to try it again. Yet, every morning, Chen woke at 4 o'clock, humming to himself as he prepared his dough. He kneaded it with care, shaped each loaf with attention, and placed them in his oven with a satisfaction that suggested he was creating masterpieces. When he opened his shop at dawn, the smile on his face was absolutely genuine. Most days, he sold almost nothing. The few customers who came were usually travelers who didn't know better, or villagers who felt sorry for him and bought a loaf out of pity. Chen seemed utterly unaware that his bread was terrible, or if he knew, he didn't seem to care. The village had a small Buddhist temple, and the monk there, a perceptive man named Hui, became fascinated by Chen. Most people, when their work is rejected day after day, become bitter or depressed. They quit, or they rage against the unfairness of it all, or they sink into self-pity. Chen just kept baking his terrible bread and smiling. One morning, Hui visited the bakery just as Chen was pulling a fresh batch from the oven. The smell was unfortunate, but Chen's face was radiant. "Isn't it beautiful?" Chen said, holding up a loaf. "Look at the color. Perfect golden brown. And the shape, each one is unique, like children." Hui bought a loaf, though he had no intention of eating it. "Chen," he said gently, Do you know that your bread is not well received? Chen laughed. Oh, I know, he said. I'm a terrible baker. My father was a baker, and he was wonderful at it. My grandfather too. I inherited the shop, but not the talent. He shrugged cheerfully. But I love it anyway. You love baking, even though you're not good at it? No. Chen corrected him. I love the baking. Not being good at it. Just doing it. He gestured around the small shop. I love waking up when it's still dark, when the village is quiet. I love the feel of dough in my hands. I love the smell of yeast, even if the final product doesn't taste right. I love the warmth of the oven. I love arranging the loaves on the shelf, even though most will go unsold. I love sweeping the floor at the end of the day, getting the shop ready for tomorrow. But don't you want to improve? To make bread people actually want to eat? Chen considered this. I've tried, he admitted. For years I tried. I followed my father's recipes exactly. I asked other bakers for advice. I experimented with different techniques. Nothing worked. I'm just not talented at this. He smiled. But one day I realized something. The trying to be good had made me miserable. The actual baking made me happy. So I stopped trying to be good and just enjoyed the doing. Hui was quiet for a long moment. Most people, he finally said, would quit. They would find something they were actually good at. Maybe, Chen said, but I don't want to do something else. I want to bake bread. So I bake bread. He laughed. Besides, I'm probably terrible at other things too. At least I know I love this. Over the years, Hui watched Chen closely. The baker's life didn't change much. He still made terrible bread. He still sold very little. He never became wealthy or successful by any external measure. But Hui noticed something remarkable. Chen was genuinely happy. Not the manic happiness of someone in denial, but a deep, steady contentment. Other villagers worked at jobs they were good at, jobs that paid well, jobs that earned them respect. Many of them were miserable. They complained constantly. They dreamed of retiring, of escaping, of being anywhere but where they were. They were successful but joyless. Chen was unsuccessful but joyful. One day, a merchant from a large city visited the village and happened into Chen's shop. He tasted the bread and grimaced. "This is awful," he said bluntly. "Why do you even bother?" Chen just smiled. "Because I enjoy it," he said simply. The merchant was baffled. "But there's no point. You don't make money. You don't make good bread. You don't make anything worthwhile." Chen looked at him with genuine curiosity. Is something only worthwhile if it produces results? Is happiness only valid if you can measure it? He gestured around his shop. "I spend my days doing something I love. When I die, I will have spent my life doing something I love. Most people can't say that. What could be more worthwhile?" The merchant left, shaking his head. But Hugh, who had witnessed the exchange, understood. Chen had discovered something most people never learn. That joy comes not from being good at something, not from succeeding at something, but from genuinely loving the doing of it. When Chen was very old, too frail to bake anymore, he had to close his shop. The whole village expected him to be devastated. Instead, he seemed at peace. "I had a wonderful life," he told her. "Every single day, I got to do what I loved." How many people can say that? He died a few months later, and at his funeral, someone made a joke about how even death was an improvement over eating his bread. Everyone laughed, including Hui. But Hui also cried, because he understood that Chen had been one of the wisest people he'd ever met. Chen had found happiness not by being excellent, but by loving what he did regardless of excellence. The village still talks about Chen the baker, not because he was good at baking, but because he was good at joy. This teaching shows us something revolutionary. We're taught that happiness comes from achievement, from being good at things, from success and recognition. But Chen was objectively unsuccessful by every measure, and he was happier than almost anyone. What he understood was that joy doesn't live in the destination. It lives in the journey itself, in the actual experience of doing what you love. When we're stuck in traffic, we're miserable because we're focused on getting somewhere else. When we're at work, we're often miserable because we're focused on the weekend. When we have the weekend, we're anxious because Monday is coming. We're always living somewhere other than where we actually are. Chen lived where he was. When he was kneading dough, he was kneading dough, not wishing he was better at it, not comparing himself to his father, not worrying about whether anyone would buy it, just kneading dough and enjoying the sensation of it. How many of us rob ourselves of joy this way? We go for a walk but spend the whole time on our phones, missing the walk entirely. We're with our children but thinking about work. We're at work but wishing we were somewhere else. We're never fully present for our own lives. And we tell ourselves we'll be happy when we're good enough, when we're successful enough, when we finally achieve whatever goal we're chasing. But Chen never got good at baking. He never achieved success. And he was deeply, genuinely happy from beginning to end. This doesn't mean we shouldn't try to improve or pursue excellence. It means our happiness shouldn't depend on it. The improvement can be part of the joy if we let it be. But the not yet being excellent can't be the obstacle to happiness. Think about children. They draw terrible pictures and dance without any skill and sing off-key. And they're delighted with themselves. They haven't learned yet that joy should be conditional, that they should only enjoy things they're good at. Somewhere along the way, we adults learned that lesson. Maybe it's time to unlearn it. What if you could do something you love, even if you're not good at it? What if you could enjoy the doing without needing the result to be impressive? What if joy was available right now, in the imperfect, mediocre, utterly ordinary experience of your actual life? Chen spent every day doing something he loved. Most people who are successful at their work can't say that. He had wealth beyond money. He had a richness that had nothing to do with achievement. He had the wealth of genuine enjoyment, day after day after day. Perhaps you might consider what brings you that kind of joy. Not what you're good at, not what impresses people, not what makes money or wins approval. What do you genuinely love doing? Even if you do it badly, that might be where your happiness has been hiding all along. Breathe slowly now. Let your shoulders drop. Let your whole body sink deeper into rest. Everything can wait until tomorrow. Listen as the next story begins. The student who failed for 40 years. In a Zen monastery in Kyoto, there was a student named Takeshi who had been studying for 40 years and still had not achieved enlightenment. Every year, the master would test his understanding. Every year, Takeshi would fail. The younger students whispered about him, wondering why he didn't give up and leave the monastery. After all, some of them had achieved realization in just 5 or 10 years. Takeshi had been there longer than some of them had been alive. But every morning, Takeshi would be in the meditation hall before anyone else. His posture was perfect. His practice was impeccable. He worked in the monastery garden with total dedication, did every task assigned to him with complete attention. He simply couldn't seem to grasp the final insight that would mark him as enlightened. The master, who was very old now, called Takeshi to his chamber one afternoon. "Tell me," the master said, "are you unhappy?" Takeshi thought about this. "No, master," he said. "I'm not unhappy. But you've been here 40 years and haven't achieved what you came for." "That's true," Takeshi acknowledged. "But I love being here. I love the morning meditation. I love working in the garden. I love the simplicity of this life. I love the practice itself." "Even though it hasn't given you what you wanted?" Takeshi smiled. "The practice has given me everything. It just hasn't given me enlightenment." He paused. "Or maybe it has, and I'm too stupid to recognize it." The master laughed. A rare sound. "What do you mean?" "Everything? I mean," Takeshi said slowly, "that I wake up grateful every day. I mean that I find joy in pulling weeds and eating rice and sitting still. I mean that my life feels complete, even though I'm supposedly failing at the one thing I'm supposed to accomplish." The master was quiet for a long time. "Tell me," he finally said, "what is enlightenment?" "I don't know," Takeshi admitted. "I've been trying to figure that out for 40 years. "What if," the master said softly, "enlightenment is not something you achieve, but something you notice? What if it's not in the future, waiting for you to finally be good enough, but right here in the present? In the morning meditation and the garden work and the simplicity?" Takeshi looked confused. "But you test us. You ask us questions. Some of us pass and some fail. I always fail." "Yes," the master agreed. "And yet you're happier than most of the ones who passed. You love your practice. They loved their achievement. Which one understood the teaching? I don't." "I'm not sure what you're saying." The master smiled. "I know. That's why you're my best student." The next day, the master announced that Takeshi would be leading the morning meditation. The other students were shocked. Takeshi hadn't even passed his basic koans. How could he lead? But when Takeshi led the meditation, something remarkable happened. His presence was completely genuine. He wasn't trying to appear enlightened or wise. He wasn't performing mastery. He was just fully there, completely present, obviously delighting in the simple act of sitting still and breathing. One of the younger monks, who had achieved enlightenment after just 8 years and had been feeling rather proud of himself, felt something shift inside him as he sat behind Takeshi. He realized he had been so busy achieving enlightenment that he had forgotten to enjoy his practice. He had been so focused on getting somewhere that he had missed being anywhere. After meditation, this young monk approached Takeshi. "How are you so happy?" he asked. "When you're failing?" Takeshi looked genuinely puzzled. "Failing at what?" "At enlightenment. At the whole point of being here." "Oh," Takeshi said. "I thought the point of being here was to be here. To practice. To live simply and mindfully. To find joy in ordinary things." He smiled. "If the point was to achieve enlightenment as quickly as possible, then I guess I've been doing it wrong. But I've been very happy doing it wrong, so I'm not sure I want to do it right." The young monk stood there, stunned. He had never considered that happiness and achievement might be different things. He had assumed they were the same, that achieving enlightenment would make him happy. It had, for a while, but then he started focusing on the next achievement, and the next, always chasing some future state of perfection. Takeshi wasn't chasing anything. He had already arrived. Years later, when the old master died, the monastery needed to choose a new master. Some argued for one of the enlightened students, the ones who had passed all the tests and demonstrated deep understanding. But many argued for Takeshi. He may not understand enlightenment, they said, but he lives it. Takeshi didn't become the master. He refused the position. "I'm still a student," he insisted. "I still have so much to learn." But everyone knew that his presence in the monastery was what kept it alive, kept it real, kept it from becoming just a place where people competed to be spiritual. When Takeshi died, very old and still technically a student, his last words were simply, "What a beautiful life this was." Not "I finally achieved enlightenment." Not "I finally figured it out." Just appreciation for the actual experience of his actual life. At his funeral, the current master told a story. He said that once, near the end of his life, someone asked Takeshi if he regretted spending 40 years failing to achieve enlightenment. Takeshi had laughed. "Failed?" he said. "I spent 40 years doing exactly what I loved. Every single day. Who else can say that? I didn't fail. I succeeded beyond measure." This teaching speaks to something we rarely acknowledge, that success and happiness are not the same thing. Our culture tells us to achieve, to accomplish, to reach goals, to prove ourselves. And these things can bring satisfaction. But Takeshi shows us that they're not necessary for happiness. In fact, sometimes they get in the way of happiness. When we're focused entirely on achieving, we miss the actual experience of our lives. We're so busy trying to get somewhere that we forget to enjoy being anywhere. We're working toward the weekend, toward retirement, toward some future moment when we'll finally be happy. But that future moment never quite arrives, because as soon as we reach one goal, we're already focused on the next. Takeshi wasn't focused on the goal. He was focused on the practice. He loved the meditation itself, not what the meditation might give him. He loved the work itself, not what the work might achieve. This is radical in a world that tells us everything is about the outcome. Think about how this plays out in modern life. We go to the gym not to enjoy moving our bodies, but to achieve a certain weight or appearance. We spend time with our children not to enjoy their company, but to ensure they turn out right. We do our work not because we love it, but because we need the paycheck or the promotion. We're always instrumentalizing, always using the present moment as a tool to build some better future. But what if the present moment is not a tool? What if it's the point? What if right now, exactly as it is the only time happiness is actually available? Takeshi sat in meditation for 40 years and loved it. Not because it made him enlightened, just because he loved sitting in meditation. When we can't sleep at night and we're frustrated about it, we're missing the actual experience of being awake at night. When we're stuck in traffic, we're missing the actual experience of sitting in our car. When we're washing dishes, we're missing the actual experience of warm water and soap bubbles and clean plates. We're always somewhere else, mentally, always in the future or the past, never here. And happiness only lives here. Joy only lives now. This moment, exactly as it is the only moment where contentment can be found. Notice how Takeshi's final words weren't about achievement. They were about appreciation. What a beautiful life this was. He didn't need to succeed to have a beautiful life. He just needed to notice the beauty that was already there, every single day, in the simple acts of practice and presence. What if you stopped measuring your life by achievements? What if you stopped judging each day by how productive you were or how much you accomplished? What if you just appreciated the actual experience of being alive, doing what you're doing, being where you are, not perfect, not successful, just here, now, breathing, aware. That's what Takeshi understood. That's what made him, in the end, the wisest student in the monastery. He knew how to fail joyfully. He knew how to be insufficient and happy. He knew that the point was never to get somewhere else. The point was always to be right here, loving the practice, enjoying the journey, finding peace in the simple fact of being alive. Your breath continues, steady and calm. Notice it, gentle and easy. Let yourself drift deeper. Rest as we move to another teaching. The merchant who gave everything away. In a prosperous city in ancient China, there lived a merchant named Wei who had built a considerable fortune through years of careful trading. He owned 3 shops, a large house, and had enough money to live comfortably for the rest of his life. By any measure, he was successful. By most measures, he should have been happy. But Wei felt hollow inside. Every morning he woke with a feeling of emptiness that all his possessions couldn't fill. He would walk through his large house and feel nothing. He would count his money and feel nothing. The things that should have brought satisfaction brought only a vague sense of disappointment. One day, walking through the market, Wei saw an old beggar sitting against a wall. The man was filthy, clearly homeless, possessing nothing but the ragged clothes on his back. But he was laughing, actually laughing, a deep, genuine sound of delight. Wei stopped and watched, fascinated. What could a man with nothing possibly find funny? The beggar noticed him staring. "Something amusing about me, wealthy merchant?" he asked. But there was no hostility in his voice, only friendliness. "I'm sorry," Wei said. "It's just... you were laughing. I wondered what about..." "Oh," the beggar said, still smiling. "A bird just landed on that vendor's head while he was yelling at a customer." The vendor didn't notice, but the customer was trying so hard not to laugh. It was delightful. Wei looked at this man who had nothing and was delighted by a bird. Wei had everything and was delighted by nothing. In that moment, something cracked open inside him. "How are you so happy?" Wei asked bluntly. The beggar considered this. "I have everything I need," he said. "The sun is warm. My stomach is full enough. I saw something funny. What else do I need to be happy? But you have no money, no home, no security." "That's true," the beggar agreed. "And you have all those things. Are you happy?" Wei couldn't answer. The beggar patted the ground beside him. "Sit," he invited. "Rest a moment." Wei, who never sat on dirty ground, found himself sitting. They sat in silence for a while, watching the market bustle around them. After a time, Wei realized he was noticing things he usually rushed past. The way the sunlight hit the fruit vendors' apples, the sound of children laughing as they ran between stalls, the smell of fresh bread from the baker's shop. "It's all here," the beggar said softly, as if reading his thoughts. "Joy. I mean, it's all around us, free for the taking. You don't need money to notice sunlight. You don't need a house to hear laughter. You don't need possessions to smell bread. Wei visited the beggar every day after that. Not to bring him charity, though he tried. The beggar refused money. What would I do with it? He asked. Buy things I don't need? Worry about losing it? Instead, they just sat together, and the beggar taught Wei how to notice things, how to be present, how to find joy in what was actually happening rather than in what might happen or should happen. One day, Wei made a decision that everyone thought was insane. He sold his shops, his house, everything. He gave most of the money away to people who needed it. He kept only enough to live very simply. His family was horrified. His friends thought he'd lost his mind. But Wei felt lighter than he had in years. He didn't become a beggar. He rented a tiny room and did small jobs here and there, just enough to eat and have shelter. He spent his days walking through the city, noticing things, really noticing them. The way morning light came through trees, the sound of rain on rooftops, the taste of simple food eaten when actually hungry. People asked him constantly, "Don't you regret it? Don't you miss your wealth?" His answer was always the same. "I had wealth and I was miserable. Now I have very little and I'm happy. What is there to regret?" One day, years later, Wei encountered a young merchant who reminded him of his former self. The young man was stressed, anxious, always rushing, never present. Wei invited him for tea. Over the simple drink, the young merchant complained about everything. Business was difficult. Competition was fierce. He never had enough time. He was working so hard to build his fortune. "Why?" Wei asked simply. "Why what? Why are you working so hard to build a fortune?" The young merchant looked at him as if the question was stupid. "So I can be happy." "Of course. So I can have security. So I can finally relax and enjoy life." Wei smiled gently. "I built a fortune," he said. "It didn't make me happy. I had security. I was anxious anyway. I had everything I needed to relax and enjoy life. And I couldn't." He poured more tea. "You know what did make me happy? Learning to notice this tea. Really taste it. Really be here. Drinking it with you. Watching the steam rise from the cup." The young merchant shook his head. "But you can't just give up ambition. You can't just stop trying to build something." "I didn't give up ambition," Wei corrected him. "I redirected it. I became ambitious about being present, about noticing my own life, about finding joy in what actually is rather than in what might be." He paused. "That's harder than building a fortune, honestly, but it's worth it." When Wei was old, someone asked him if he ever wished he had kept his wealth so he could have a more comfortable old age. Wei laughed. "I'm sitting on a bench in the sun, watching children play, eating an orange," he said. "How much more comfortable could I be?" He died peacefully one afternoon, sitting under his favorite tree in the market square. People said his last expression was a smile. The beggar who had taught him how to notice joy had died years earlier, but Wei had carried on the teaching. He had learned that happiness wasn't in the having, but in the noticing, not in the possessing, but in the appreciating, not in the achieving, but in the being. This story confronts us with an uncomfortable truth: more is not better. We live in a culture that constantly tells us we need more. More money, more success, more possessions, more achievements. We believe that happiness lives on the other side of more. If we just had more, then we'd be happy. But Wei had more. He had everything his culture said should make him happy, and he was empty inside. The beggar had nothing his culture said was necessary for happiness, and he was full of joy. What does that tell us about where happiness actually lives? It lives in attention. It lives in presence. It lives in the ability to notice and appreciate what's actually here, rather than constantly reaching for what's not here yet. When we're scrolling through social media, we're missing our actual lives. When we're constantly shopping for things we don't need, we're trying to fill an emptiness that can't be filled with objects. When we're always planning the next vacation, we're not present for the life we're living right now. Wei's transformation wasn't about rejecting material things or becoming a minimalist. It was about recognizing that happiness doesn't come from the things themselves. It comes from our relationship to our experience. He could have kept his wealth and learned to be happy, but he recognized that the wealth was distracting him, keeping him focused on having rather than being. Think about your own life. When are you actually happy? Is it when you buy something new? That happiness usually fades quickly. Is it when you achieve something? That satisfaction is often fleeting. Or is it in simpler moments, laughing with a friend, tasting something delicious, feeling the warmth of sun on your skin, watching a bird land on someone's head? The moments of genuine happiness are usually free and simple, but we miss them because we're not paying attention. We're too busy acquiring or achieving or worrying or planning. We're so focused on building a life that we forget to live the life we're building. We're so busy becoming successful that we don't notice whether we're actually happy. Wei shows us that we can change this pattern at any time. Not by giving everything away necessarily, but by redirecting our attention. By learning to notice what's actually here, by finding the joy that's available right now, rather than waiting for the joy that might come later. The beggar's teaching was simple. The sun is warm. My stomach is full enough. I saw something funny. What else do I need? What else do any of us need? Right now. In this moment. What's actually missing? Not what might be missing tomorrow or what was missing yesterday. Right now. You're breathing. You have a place to rest. You're hearing these words. Maybe there's some comfort around you, some warmth, some safety. These are not small things. These are everything. This is your life, happening right now. Not in the future, when you finally have enough or achieve enough. Right now. Perhaps you might consider where you're placing your attention. Are you constantly in the future, imagining how happy you'll be when you finally get what you want? Are you in the past, wishing things were different? Or can you be right here, noticing what's actually present, finding the small joys that are available in this very moment? Wei learned that happiness was always available. It was never about having more. It was always about noticing more. Noticing the tea, noticing the sunlight, noticing the children playing, noticing his own breathing, his own aliveness, his own moment-by-moment existence. That's where joy lives. That's where it's always lived. Right here, right now, in the simple act of being present for your own life. Let your thoughts drift like clouds. Your mind is becoming quieter. Let go of any need to figure anything out. Everything can wait until tomorrow. Rest now. The temple cat, who taught nothing. At a monastery in the mountains of Tibet, there lived a cat named Tenzin. Tenzin was orange and white and profoundly lazy. While the monks rose before dawn to meditate, Tenzin slept. While they practiced their chants and rituals, Tenzin napped in patches of sunlight. While they studied ancient texts, Tenzin yawned and stretched and went back to sleep. The visiting students who came to study at the monastery were often puzzled by Tenzin. In a place dedicated to discipline and practice and enlightenment, this cat seemed to do nothing at all. Yet the head teacher, an old monk named Dorje, treated Tenzin with unusual respect. He would sometimes pause his teachings to watch Tenzin sleep. Once, when asked about enlightenment, Dorje pointed to the sleeping cat and said, "There, study that." The students didn't understand. What could a lazy cat possibly teach about enlightenment? A young student named Pema became particularly frustrated with this. She had come to the monastery to learn deep wisdom, to transform herself, to achieve spiritual realization. She practiced zealously. She meditated until her legs ached. She studied texts until her eyes burned. She was dedicated, serious, and deeply, profoundly unhappy. Everything she did felt like effort. Every meditation session was a battle with her wandering mind. Every moment of practice felt like she was failing to be good enough, present enough, enlightened enough. She was exhausted. One afternoon, after a particularly difficult meditation session where she had cried from frustration, Pema found herself sitting in the courtyard, watching Tenzin sleep in a patch of sunlight. The cat's breathing was slow and even. His paws twitched occasionally, as if he was dreaming. His face looked completely peaceful. "How do you do it?" Pema asked the sleeping cat. "How are you so at peace when you do absolutely nothing?" As if in answer, Tenzin stretched luxuriously, opened one eye to look at her, and went back to sleep. Dorje emerged from the temple and sat down beside Pema. He too watched the cat for a long moment. "You're working very hard," he observed. "Yes," Pema said. "I'm trying to achieve enlightenment." Dorje said. "And how is that going?" Pema's eyes filled with tears. "Terribly. I'm failing at everything. My mind won't be still. I can't achieve any of the states we're supposed to achieve. I'm the worst student here." Dorje was quiet for a moment. Then he pointed to Tenzin. "That cat has never tried to achieve enlightenment," he said. "Not once. He has never practiced meditation. He has never studied a single text. He has never worked at anything. And yet..." "And yet what?" Pema asked. "And yet, look at him. Completely at peace. Totally present. Perfectly content. When he sleeps completely. When he eats completely. When he plays with a leaf, he plays completely. He never wishes he were somewhere else doing something else. He never judges himself for not being good enough. He just is." "But he's a cat," Pema protested. "He doesn't have to achieve enlightenment. He doesn't have spiritual goals." "Exactly," Dorje said softly. "Maybe that's his teaching." Pema sat with this for a long time. She watched Tenzin wake up, stretch again, and begin grooming himself. He was utterly absorbed in the grooming, as if nothing else in the world existed. No past, no future, no goals, no failure. Just the present moment of cleaning his paws. "What if," Dorje continued, "the trying is the problem? What if the effort to achieve enlightenment is what's keeping you from it? But if I don't try, I'll never get anywhere." Dorje smiled. "Where are you trying to get? You're already here. This moment, sitting in this courtyard, watching this cat, breathing this air. You're already here. There's nowhere else to get to. Something in Pema broke open at these words. She started crying, not from frustration this time, but from relief. She had been working so hard to get somewhere she already was. She had been trying so hard to achieve something that wasn't an achievement at all, just a recognition. From that day on, Pema practiced differently. She still meditated, but she stopped trying so hard. She stopped fighting with her wandering mind and just noticed it wandering. She stopped judging herself for not being good enough and just sat. Like Tenzin, she tried to be fully present for whatever was actually happening, rather than working towards some future state of perfection. It didn't happen immediately. Old habits of striving and judging died hard. But gradually, Pema found a lightness in her practice she had never felt before. She started to enjoy meditation rather than endure it. She started to notice the small joys, the feeling of her breath moving in and out, the particular quality of morning light in the meditation hall, the sound of rain on the roof. Other students started asking her what had changed. "You seem different," they said. "More peaceful." Pema would point to Tenzin, who was usually nearby sleeping. "I'm studying with the master," she would say. Years later, when Pema herself became a teacher, students would ask her about the path to enlightenment. She would tell them about Tenzin, about the cat who taught her that enlightenment wasn't something to achieve through effort, but something to notice through presence. That peace wasn't a destination but a recognition that the desperate seeking was often what obscured what we sought. "Watch how a cat sleeps," she would tell them, "completely, totally, without reservation." That's the teaching. Not working hard, not achieving anything, just being fully present for whatever is actually happening. That's all. That's everything. Tenzin himself eventually died, very old and still utterly lazy. At his passing, Dorje said, "The greatest teacher this monastery ever had." Some of the students thought he was joking. Others understood that he wasn't. This teaching touches something we resist, the idea that our effort might be the obstacle. We're taught that anything worthwhile requires hard work, that success comes through striving, that we must earn peace and happiness through dedication and discipline. And in many areas of life, this is true. But in the realm of happiness, the opposite is often true. Pema was working so hard to be peaceful that she couldn't feel peace. She was trying so hard to achieve enlightenment that she missed the enlightenment available in each simple moment. Her effort was creating the tension she was trying to escape. The trying itself was the problem. Think about how this shows up in your own life. You're lying in bed trying to fall asleep, and the trying keeps you awake. You're trying to relax, and the effort makes you tense. You're trying to be happy, and the trying itself generates unhappiness because it implies that right now, as you are, isn't good enough. Tenzin the cat didn't try to be peaceful. He just was peaceful. Not because he was enlightened or spiritual or disciplined, just because he was fully present for whatever he was doing. When sleeping, completely sleeping. When eating, completely eating. No judgment, no comparison, no wishing things were different, just being. What if you could bring that quality to your own life? Not the laziness necessarily, but the complete presence. When you're washing dishes, actually wash dishes. Feel the water, smell the soap, see the bubbles. Don't think about what you'll do after. Just be fully here, doing this. When you're talking to someone, actually listen. Don't plan your response. Don't think about other things. Just be present for this conversation, this person, this moment. When you're eating, taste the food. When you're walking, feel your feet against the ground. When you're breathing, notice the breath. This sounds simple, but it's the hardest thing we ever try to do. Our minds constantly pull us into the past or future. We're always judging, comparing, wishing, planning, regretting. We're almost never fully here. And happiness only exists here. Joy only lives now. Peace only comes when we stop reaching for it and notice that it's already available in this moment, exactly as it is. Pema learned that the path to peace wasn't about becoming something she wasn't. It was about fully being what she already was. The striving to be better, more spiritual, more enlightened was the tension she was trying to escape. When she let go of the trying and just practiced being present, the peace she had been seeking revealed itself as already here, already available, already complete. This doesn't mean we stop all effort or give up on improvement. It means we stop making our peace conditional on future achievement. We stop telling ourselves we'll be happy when we're good enough, spiritual enough, successful enough. We find the happiness that's available right now, in the imperfect, unenlightened, completely ordinary experience of being alive. Like Tenzin sleeping in the sun, not working toward anything, not achieving anything, just fully, completely here. That's the teaching. That's all of it. Just this moment, just this breath, just this complete presence with what actually is. Nothing more needed. Nothing else required. Just this. And just this is everything. Notice your breathing, gentle and easy. Let your body become heavy. Let your mind become quiet. Let sleep come naturally, without forcing. Another story waits for you. The farmer who lost everything 3 times. In a rural province of Vietnam, there lived a farmer named Min who experienced what most would call terrible luck. When he was 30, a flood destroyed his entire rice crop, leaving him with nothing. He rebuilt. When he was 45, a fire burned down his house and barn. He rebuilt again. When he was 60, thieves stole all his animals and equipment. Each time, his neighbors would gather around, expressing sympathy and outrage. "How terrible," they would say. "How unfair. How will you recover?" And each time, Min would say the same thing, "Maybe." After the 3rd disaster, his neighbors thought he had lost his mind. "Maybe?" they demanded. "You've lost everything 3 times. There's no maybe about it." "This is definitely terrible." Min just smiled and started rebuilding once more. There was a traveling Buddhist monk who heard about Min and became curious. This was someone who had faced genuine hardship repeatedly and somehow maintained equanimity. The monk wanted to understand how. He found Min working in his field, planting new rice seedlings by hand. The monk sat on a low wall and watched for a while. Min worked steadily, methodically, sometimes humming to himself. "They say you've lost everything 3 times. The monk finally said. "That's true." Min agreed, not stopping his work. "And yet you seem content." Min straightened up, wiping his forehead. "Should I be miserable instead? Most people would be," the monk observed. Min considered this. He gestured to the field around them. "Right now, in this moment, I'm planting rice. The sun is warm on my back. The soil is good. My hands are strong enough to work. What is there to be miserable about? But you lost your crop, your house, your animals. Yes, I did. And that was difficult when it happened. I don't deny that. But that was then. This is now. Right now, I'm planting rice. He smiled. I'm quite good at planting rice. I enjoy it. So here I am, doing something I'm good at and enjoy. That seems fortunate to me. The monk was intrigued. Tell me about when the flood came. What did you think? Min sat down on the wall beside the monk. When the flood came, he said, my first thought was despair. All that work, all that rice, gone. I sat by the ruined field and cried. I'm not pretending I didn't feel the loss. He paused, but then I noticed something. I was still alive. My wife was alive. Our children were safe. We had lost rice, but we hadn't lost each other. And I thought, maybe this is terrible, or maybe this is lucky. I don't know yet. How is losing everything lucky? The monk asked. Well, Ming said, after the flood, my oldest son, who had moved to the city, came home to help us rebuild. I hadn't seen him in 3 years. We worked together for months, rebuilding the irrigation channels, replanting. We became close again. If the flood hadn't happened, maybe he never would have come home. Maybe we would have stayed distant. So was the flood lucky or unlucky? I honestly don't know. And the fire? Min laughed. The fire actually was lucky, though I didn't think so at the time. When we rebuilt the house, my wife designed it differently. The old house had a smoking problem, and the kitchen was always dark. The new house had better ventilation and more windows. We should have rebuilt it years earlier, but we never would have if the fire hadn't forced us to. So we lost the old house, but we gained a better one. And the theft? The monk asked. Ming said, that one is still unfolding. Maybe it's unlucky. Or maybe... He smiled mysteriously. Maybe what? Well, my youngest daughter wanted to move to the city to study. We needed her here to help with the animals and equipment. We kept telling her no. We couldn't manage without her. Then, everything was stolen. Suddenly, we had no animals to tend, no equipment to maintain. She could go study. She's at university now, learning things I never dreamed of learning. If we still had everything, she'd still be here, possibly resenting us, possibly missing her opportunity. So, was the theft lucky or unlucky? The monk sat in silence for a long time. Finally, he said, most people would be destroyed by what you've experienced. Most people, Min said gently, think they know whether something is good or bad when it happens. They label it immediately. This is terrible. This is wonderful. But life is longer than a single moment. What seems terrible today might turn out to be fortunate tomorrow. What seems fortunate today might bring problems tomorrow. I stopped pretending I know which is which. So you just say, maybe? I say, maybe. Min agreed. And then I do what's in front of me. After the flood, planting rice was in front of me. So I planted rice. After the fire, building a house was in front of me. So I built a house. After the theft, finding new ways to farm was in front of me. So I found new ways. I don't spend time being miserable about what happened or worried about what might happen. I just do what's here to do. He stood up and returned to his planting. Besides, he said over his shoulder, being miserable about loss doesn't bring anything back. It just means I lose twice. Once to the disaster, and once to my own misery. That seems wasteful. The monk watched Min work for the rest of the afternoon. He noticed that Min was completely present for the task. No brooding, no complaining, no storytelling about past losses. Just this moment. These hands, this soil, these seedlings, just the work itself, done with care and attention and even enjoyment. When the monk left, he told people he had met one of the wisest men in the province. When they asked what made Min so wise, the monk said, he knows that he doesn't know. He's experienced enough to understand that what seems like disaster might be disguised fortune, and what seems like fortune might be disguised disaster. So he stays present with what is, rather than getting lost in judgments about whether it's good or bad. Min continued farming for many more years. He had his share of good harvests and bad, of easy years and difficult ones. Each time something happened, his neighbors would say, "How fortunate," or "How terrible," and Min would smile and say, "Maybe," and then he would do whatever the moment required, with full attention and surprising peace. When Ming died, very old and still farming, his family gathered around him. "You had a hard life," one of his grandchildren said. Min's eyes twinkled. "Maybe," he said, "or maybe I had a lucky life. I got to farm land I loved. I got to rebuild things 3 times and learn from each rebuilding. I got to watch my children grow and succeed. I got to plant thousands of rice seedlings and watch them grow into food for my community. I got to live in a well-designed house and watch my daughter become educated." He smiled. "That sounds pretty fortunate to me." Those were his last words. "That sounds pretty fortunate to me." And his family, remembering his resilience, his peace, his ability to find fortune in disaster, had to agree. This teaching challenges our immediate judgments about experiences. We're so quick to label things as good or bad, fortunate or unfortunate, lucky or unlucky. Someone cuts us off in traffic, bad. We get a promotion, good. It rains on our picnic, bad. We find $20, good. We live our lives in a constant stream of judgments, deciding instantly whether each experience is positive or negative. But Min shows us that we often don't actually know. What seems terrible in the moment might turn out to be fortunate. What seems wonderful might bring unexpected problems. Life is long and complex and interconnected in ways we can't see while we're living it. Our judgments are premature, based on incomplete information. More importantly, our judgments create our suffering. When we label something as terrible, we make ourselves miserable. We add mental and emotional suffering to whatever actual difficulty exists. We lose twice. As Ming said, once to the event itself, and once to our own reaction to it. Think about your own life. How many times have you been devastated by something that later turned out to be a blessing? The job you didn't get that led you to a better opportunity. The relationship that ended that made room for a healthier one. The plan that fell through that opened up something you never would have considered. And how many times have you gotten exactly what you wanted, only to find it brought new problems? The promotion that came with unbearable stress. The new house that turned out to have issues. The opportunity that looked perfect but felt wrong. We simply don't know. In the moment, whether something is truly good or bad, but we make ourselves miserable or elated based on our immediate judgment. And then we suffer when reality turns out to be more complex than our judgment allowed for. Min's maybe is a profound spiritual practice. It's a refusal to pretend we know things we don't know. It's humility in the face of life's complexity. And it creates space for equanimity, for peace, regardless of circumstances. When something difficult happens, and you can hold it lightly with, maybe this is terrible, or maybe this will turn out okay in ways I can't see yet. You don't add extra suffering to the difficulty. You stay present with what actually is, rather than spiraling into stories about how awful everything is. And when something wonderful happens, and you can hold it lightly with maybe this is great, or maybe it will bring challenges I can't predict. You don't set yourself up for devastating disappointment. You enjoy the good while it's here without clinging to it desperately. Notice how Min stayed present with the task at hand. After each loss, he didn't spend years brooding or regretting. He did what the moment required. Plant rice, build a house, find new methods. He stayed with what was actually in front of him rather than getting lost in stories about past disasters or future worries. This is the key to happiness in difficulty, not denying the difficulty. Min didn't pretend the losses didn't hurt. He cried by the flooded field, but he didn't live there. He moved through the grief and returned to the present moment, to the actual work at hand, to the life that was still happening right now. What if you could meet your life this way, not judging every experience as good or bad, but holding it lightly with maybe, not knowing for certain whether this difficulty is disaster or disguised blessing, not knowing whether this joy will last or transform into something else, just being present with what is, doing what's needed, finding the small fortunes available in every situation. Maybe that traffic jam gave you time to hear a song you love. Maybe that rainy picnic led to a cozy indoor day you'll remember fondly. Maybe that loss created space for something new. Maybe, just maybe. And in that maybe, there's freedom from the tyranny of our own judgments, our own certainty about what's good and bad. There's space for peace, for presence, for doing what's in front of us with care and attention. There's space for happiness regardless of circumstances. Let your jaw release any tightness it's been holding. Feel yourself melting into rest. Your body knows exactly what to do. Let yourself begin to unwind, breath by breath. Rest as another teaching arrives. The painter who only painted joy. In a small coastal town in Japan, there lived a painter named Yuki who had a peculiar specialization. She only painted joyful scenes, not dramatic or important subjects, not grand landscapes or profound moments, just simple happiness. A child laughing, an old couple holding hands, someone biting into a perfectly ripe peach, rain on a window with a cat sleeping nearby. Other artists in the town painted important things, epic battles, tragic moments, stunning vistas. Their work was considered serious art. Yuki's work was dismissed as trivial, pretty, perhaps, but ultimately meaningless. Where was the depth? Where was the commentary on the human condition? Where was the darkness that made light meaningful? But Yuki didn't care. She painted what she wanted to paint. Every morning, she would walk through the town, looking for moments of joy. She carried a small notebook and would sketch quickly when she saw something that delighted her. Someone stretching in the morning sun, a dog rolling in grass, two friends laughing over tea. These became her paintings. A famous art critic once visited the town. He toured the local galleries and studios. When he came to Yuki's small studio, he spent perhaps 5 minutes looking at her work. Then he said, dismissively, "Pleasant. But there's no substance here. No real meaning. You're painting the superficial surface of life, not its depths." Yuki smiled. "Perhaps," she said, "or perhaps joy is the depth." The critic laughed, not unkindly. "Joy is easy," he said. "Anyone can paint happiness. Real art explores suffering, darkness, the difficult truths of existence." "Have you ever tried to paint joy?" Yuki asked. "Real joy. I mean, not sentimentality or prettiness. Actual joy." "I don't paint joy," the critic said. "I paint truth." "Ah," Yuki said. "So joy isn't true?" The critic left. But the conversation bothered him. He was a man who appreciated serious art, who believed that art should confront difficult realities. He had written extensively about the role of art in exposing suffering and injustice. But was he wrong to dismiss joy as superficial? He went back to Yuki's studio the next day. She was painting a scene of an old man feeding birds. The man's face was lit with such simple pleasure that the critic felt something catch in his throat. "Why this?" he asked. "Why paint this ordinary moment?" "Because it's not ordinary," Yuki said, not stopping her work. "Watch him." She gestured to her window, where the real scene was unfolding in the square below. "That man is 90 years old. He lost his wife last year. He has arthritis that makes walking painful. He could be bitter. He could be in despair. Instead, every morning, he comes here and feeds the birds. He talks to them. He laughs when they land on his hand. In the midst of all his grief and pain, he finds this moment of pure joy." She looked at the critic. "That's not superficial. That's profound." The critic watched the old man for a long time. Then he said, softly, "I've been looking for misery for so long. I forgot to notice joy." "Most people do," Yuki said gently. "They think suffering is more real than happiness. They think darkness is more profound than light. But I think it takes courage to notice joy. It takes attention. It takes practice." Over the next week, the critic kept returning to Yuki's studio. She was painting a new piece each day. A woman tasting soup and closing her eyes in satisfaction. 2 children splashing in puddles. A man laughing so hard he had to wipe tears from his eyes. "How do you find these moments?" the critic asked. "They're everywhere," Yuki said. "But you have to look. You have to really see people, really notice what's happening. Most people are so focused on what's wrong that they miss what's right. They're so aware of pain that they're blind to pleasure." She showed him her notebooks, filled with years of sketches, thousands of moments of joy, captured in quick lines. "This is my practice," she said. "Every day, find joy. Not pretend everything is perfect. Not ignore suffering. Just notice that even in a world with suffering, there is also joy. Even in a life with pain, there are moments of happiness. And those moments matter. They're not less real than the pain. They're not less true than the suffering." The critic wrote a new essay after his visit. It was very different from his usual work. He wrote about how art had taught him to see suffering but had failed to teach him to see joy. how he had become so sophisticated at analyzing darkness that he had lost the ability to appreciate light. How Yuki, with her simple paintings, had reminded him that happiness is as complex and profound as sadness, perhaps more so because it requires conscious noticing rather than passive acceptance. The essay created controversy. Other critics accused him of becoming soft, of abandoning intellectual rigor. But the essay also reached people. Letters poured in from readers who said they had been doing the same thing, focusing so intently on problems that they had forgotten to notice pleasures, looking so hard for what was wrong that they had stopped seeing what was right. Yuki became somewhat famous after that. Galleries wanted her work. People traveled to see her paintings. But nothing changed about her practice. Every morning, she still walked through town with her notebook. Every day, she still looked for moments of joy to capture. She wasn't trying to deny suffering or paint a false picture of life. She was simply choosing to notice and celebrate the happiness that existed alongside the pain. When Yuki was very old, a young artist came to study with her. "Teach me to paint joy," the young woman said. "First," Yuki said, "you must learn to see it. Come, walk with me." They walked through the town. At first, the young artist saw nothing special. Just ordinary people doing ordinary things. But Yuki kept pointing. "Look, there. See how that child is completely absorbed in examining a flower? Look there. See that couple? How they synchronize their steps without thinking? There. That person just had a first sip of coffee. See the satisfaction on their face?" After a week of walking and looking, the young artist started to see it. Joy was everywhere. In tiny moments, brief expressions, small gestures. It had always been there. She just hadn't been trained to notice it. "Now," Yuki said, "you can begin to paint it. But remember, you're not painting to make people happy. You're painting to make people notice, to remind them that their life contains these moments, that even on their hardest days, there is probably something, somewhere, that offers a moment of light." Yuki died peacefully, surrounded by her paintings. Her last painting, still on the easel, was of her own hand, holding a paintbrush. Simple, joyful, a celebration of a life spent noticing happiness and sharing it with the world. This story touches on something crucial, that happiness is not superficial just because it's pleasant. We live in a culture that often valorizes suffering, that assumes depth equals darkness, that believes serious people focus on problems rather than joys. But this is a choice, not a truth. Yuki understood that joy requires as much attention as suffering. Pain announces itself. It demands our focus. But happiness often whispers. It exists in small moments that pass quickly if we're not paying attention. The taste of good food, the warmth of sun, a genuine smile from a stranger. These moments are available to us constantly, but we miss them because we're not looking for them. We're trained to look for problems. What's wrong? What needs fixing? What's missing? This isn't bad in itself. But when it's our only mode of attention, we create a life that feels impoverished even when it's objectively abundant. We have food but don't taste it. We have shelter but don't appreciate it. We have people who care about us, but we're too busy focusing on who doesn't care. Think about your own attention patterns. When you scroll through social media, what captures your attention? Probably outrage or envy or comparison, not joy. When you think about your day, what do you remember? Probably the frustrations and problems. not the small pleasures. When you talk to friends, what do you discuss? Probably complaints and concerns, not appreciations. This isn't wrong, but it's incomplete. There's another way to experience life, exemplified by Yuki's practice. Actively looking for joy, consciously noticing pleasures, deliberately paying attention to what's working rather than only what's not working. This doesn't mean denying problems. Yuki wasn't painting a false picture of life. She acknowledged that the old man feeding birds had lost his wife and lived with pain. But she also noticed that he found joy anyway. Both realities coexist. The question is, which one we choose to focus on. When you're stuck in traffic, you can focus on the frustration. That's real. Or you can notice the song on the radio that you love. Also real. Both exist simultaneously. You don't have to pretend you're not frustrated, but you also don't have to miss the song. When you're at a difficult job, you can focus on everything that's wrong. That's valid. Or you can notice the colleague who made you laugh, or the problem you solved cleverly, or the coffee that was exactly the right temperature. Both the difficulties and the small pleasures exist. You get to choose where you place your attention. Yuki's practice was choosing joy, not exclusively, not denying anything else, just making a conscious choice to notice, appreciate, and celebrate the moments of happiness that exist in every life, even the hardest ones. This is a practice, not a personality. You can train yourself to notice joy the way Yuki trained herself. When you wake up, instead of immediately thinking about everything you have to do, notice one thing that's pleasant. The comfort of your bed, the sound of birds, the smell of coffee brewing. Just notice it, briefly, before moving into your day. During your day, pause occasionally to find one thing that's working, one thing that's pleasant, one moment of small joy. It doesn't have to be big. It just has to be noticed. The temperature is nice. Someone smiled at you. You solved a problem. You tasted something good. Just notice. Before sleep, instead of reviewing everything that went wrong, find 3 moments from the day that were pleasant. 3 tiny joys. They're there. They always are. But you have to look for them. Like Yuki, walking through town with her notebook. You have to train yourself to see what's always been there, but often goes unnoticed. This practice doesn't fix problems or remove pain, but it adds balance. It reminds you that your life contains both difficulties and pleasures, and you get to choose which ones to emphasize in your awareness. You get to choose whether to live like the critic before he met Yuki, sophisticated about suffering but blind to joy, or like Yuki herself, aware of darkness but committed to noticing light. What would change if you practiced noticing joy? If you trained yourself to see the pleasures as clearly as you see the problems? If you gave happiness the same attention you give unhappiness, not as denial, but as balance? Not as superficiality, but as depth? Because joy is deep. Joy is profound. Joy is real. And joy is happening right now, in small ways, if you know how to look for it. Feel your body sinking deeper into rest. Notice tension releasing from your neck. Let yourself drift. Nothing needs your attention right now. Everything can wait until tomorrow. Rest now. The village of complaining. In ancient China, there was a village where complaining had become an art form. The villagers competed over who had the hardest life, the worst luck, the most difficult circumstances. Morning greetings consisted of listing grievances. My back hurts. My crops are struggling. My neighbor's rooster wakes me too early. Even when things went well, villagers would find something to complain about. A good harvest? Now we have to work harder to process it all. Beautiful weather probably means drought is coming. Into this village walked a wandering monk named Shen. He arrived on a day when the complaints were particularly vigorous. The rice merchant was complaining that business was too slow. The baker was complaining that business was too busy. The mayor was complaining that no one appreciated his leadership. The mayor's wife was complaining that everyone expected too much of her husband. Shen listened to all of this with interest. Then he did something unusual. He sat down in the village square and started laughing. Not mockingly, but with genuine delight, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. The villagers stopped complaining and stared at him. "What's so funny?" the mayor demanded. "You are," Shen said cheerfully. "All of you. You live in one of the most beautiful villages I've ever seen. Your harvest is abundant. Your children are healthy. You have peace, food, shelter, and community, and you're all utterly miserable. It's remarkable." The villagers were offended. "You don't understand our problems," the rice merchant said stiffly. "Tell me your problems," Shen invited. The merchant began listing his grievances. Sales were down. Competition was increasing. His son wanted to move to the city instead of taking over the business. His knees hurt when it rained. "I see," Shen said when the merchant finished. "And what's going well?" The merchant looked confused. "What do you mean? What's going well in your life? What are you grateful for? What brings you joy?" The merchant thought for a long moment. "Nothing," he finally said. "My life is just one problem after another." "Really?" Shen said. "You're healthy enough to work. You have a business that feeds your family. You have a son, even if he wants a different path. You have knees that hurt when it rains, which means you can still walk. Are none of these things worth appreciating?" The merchant frowned. He had never thought about it that way. Shen turned to the baker. "And you? What brings you joy?" The baker was equally stumped. "I'm too busy to think about joy," she said. "I have bread to make." "You make bread that feeds this entire village," Shen said. "Every single day, people eat what you create with your own hands. You have the skill to transform flour and water into nourishment. You have the strength to work hard. You have customers who need you. Is there no joy in any of that?" The baker opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. When he put it that way, her life did sound rather fortunate. Shen stood up. "I propose an experiment," he announced. "For 1 week, I challenge every person in this village to notice one thing each day that brings you joy or gratitude. Just one thing, and share it here, in this square. Each evening." "Can you do that?" The villagers looked at each other skeptically. This seemed pointless. But Shen was a monk, and there was a tradition of respecting monks, so they reluctantly agreed. The first evening, the gathering was awkward. People shuffled their feet, embarrassed. Finally, a young woman spoke up. "I noticed," she said hesitantly, "that my daughter's laugh is really beautiful. I hear it all the time, but today I actually listened to it. It made me happy." There was silence. Then an old man said, "My wife made my favorite soup today. I always just eat it without thinking. Today I thanked her." She smiled. "That was nice." Another person shared. Then another. "Small things." the way morning light came through a window, the satisfaction of finishing a difficult task, a kind word from a neighbor. Nothing dramatic, nothing life-changing, just small moments of pleasure or gratitude that they had trained themselves not to notice. By the third day, people were coming to the evening gathering eagerly, excited to share what they had noticed. The rice merchant talked about how his son had helped him organize the storeroom and how capable the young man was. "I've been so focused on his leaving that I haven't appreciated his presence while he's still here." The baker talked about the smell of fresh bread. "I've smelled it every day for 20 years, she said, "but I haven't really appreciated it until now. It's actually wonderful." By the end of the week, something had shifted in the village. People still had problems. The rice merchant's sales were still slow. The baker was still busy. The mayor's knees still hurt when it rained. Nothing external had changed, but the internal experience of the villagers had transformed. They discovered that complaining had been a habit, not a necessity. They had trained themselves to notice problems so thoroughly that they had become blind to pleasures. They could have the exact same life and experience it completely differently just by changing where they placed their attention. On the seventh evening, Shen prepared to leave the village. The mayor tried to convince him to stay. "You've changed our village," he said. "We're happier now." Shen smiled. "I didn't change anything. I just reminded you to notice what was already here. The joy was always present. You were just ignoring it." "But what if we fall back into old habits?" the baker asked. "You might," Shen acknowledged. "Complaining is easy. It requires no effort to see what's wrong. Noticing joy requires practice, attention, daily choice. You have to work at happiness in a way you don't have to work at misery." He looked around at the gathered villagers. "Here's what I've learned in my years of wandering. Every village has problems. Every person has difficulties. But every village also has beauty. Every person also has blessings. The villages that are happy aren't the ones without problems. They're the ones that choose to notice their blessings as much as their burdens." After Shen left, the village continued the evening gatherings. It became a tradition. Every evening, people would share one thing they were grateful for or that had brought them joy. Some days it was harder than others. On difficult days, the offerings were smaller. "I'm grateful my neighbor checked on me. I found joy in the way rain sounds on my roof." But the practice continued. And over time, the village became known not as the village of complaining, but as the village of gratitude. Travelers would comment on how content the people seemed. "What's your secret?" they would ask. The villagers would smile and say, "We practice noticing joy. It doesn't happen by itself. You have to choose it. But the choice gets easier with practice." Years later, when people asked about the monk who had transformed their village, the old rice merchant, now retired and playing with his grandchildren while his son ran the business successfully, would say, "He didn't transform anything. He just held up a mirror and showed us what we were doing to ourselves. We were making ourselves miserable by choice. So we chose differently. That's all. But that's everything." This teaching reveals something uncomfortable. Much of our unhappiness is self-inflicted through habitual attention patterns. The villagers weren't wrong that they had problems. The problems were real, but they were making themselves more miserable than the problems required by focusing exclusively on what was wrong while ignoring what was right. We do this constantly. We train ourselves to notice problems. Our minds scan for threats, for difficulties, for what's not working. this was useful evolutionarily. Our ancestors who noticed dangers survived better than those who didn't. But in modern life, this constant problem scanning makes us miserable. We wake up and immediately start thinking about everything we have to do, everything that might go wrong. We scroll through news and social media, absorbing an endless stream of problems and outrages. We talk to friends and bond over complaints. We go to bed reviewing everything that went wrong during the day. We're marinating in negativity, and then we wonder why we're not happy. But notice what happened in the village. The problems didn't change. What changed was attention. When people started looking for moments of joy and gratitude, they found them. They had always been there, happening alongside the problems. But the villagers had trained themselves not to notice. This is the profound truth. Your attention shapes your experience more than your circumstances do. Two people can have nearly identical lives and have completely different experiences based solely on what they choose to notice. One person focuses on what's missing and feels deprived. Another focuses on what's present and feels abundant. Same life, different experience. The difference is attention. Think about your own patterns. When you wake up, what do you think about first? Probably your to-do list, your worries, your obligations. When was the last time you woke up and thought, I'm grateful for this comfortable bed. I'm grateful I can see the morning light. I'm grateful for another day alive. These things are just as real as your problems, but you probably don't notice them. When someone asks how you are, what do you say? Probably you share what's difficult or stressful. When was the last time you shared something you're genuinely grateful for or that brought you joy? We've been trained that sharing problems creates connection, and sharing joys seems like bragging. But this training makes us rehearse our difficulties constantly while ignoring our blessings. The village's practice of daily gratitude wasn't about denying problems. People could still acknowledge difficulties, but they balanced that acknowledgement with equal attention to blessings. They made their happiness a practice, something they worked at daily, rather than assuming it would just happen when circumstances improved. This is revolutionary. Happiness is not something that happens to you when life gets good enough. It's something you create through where you place your attention. You can wait your whole life for circumstances to be perfect, or you can start noticing the joys that exist right now in imperfect circumstances. What would happen if you tried the village's practice? Each day, notice one thing that brought you joy or gratitude. Just one thing. Not to fix everything or make all problems disappear. Just to balance your attention. To remind yourself that alongside whatever difficulties exist, there are also pleasures, blessings, moments worth appreciating. Maybe it's the first sip of coffee. Maybe it's a kind word from a stranger. Maybe it's the way your pet greets you. Maybe it's simply that you're breathing, alive, experiencing this moment. Small things, available every day. Easy to miss if you're not looking. Impossible to miss once you practice looking. The villagers discovered that complaining was a habit they could break. Noticing joy was a habit they could build. It required intention at first, conscious effort, but over time, it became natural. Their brains started automatically scanning for pleasures as well as problems. They retrained their attention. They chose happiness not by changing their circumstances, but by changing their relationship to their circumstances. You can make the same choice. Right now, in this moment, something pleasant is available. Maybe it's the comfort of where you're lying. Maybe it's the sound of these words. Maybe it's the simple fact that you're safe enough to rest. It's here. It's real. It counts. And noticing it, appreciating it, letting yourself feel grateful for it, that's the practice. That's how you build a life of joy regardless of circumstances. One noticed moment at a time. One appreciated blessing at a time. One conscious choice at a time. Let your breath be soft and gentle. Feel how your body knows exactly what to do. Let yourself continue to unwind, breath by breath. Rest deeply as we continue. The Garden of Unexpected Flowers. In a Vietnamese monastery, there was a meditation garden that had been carefully designed by generations of monks. Every stone placed precisely, every path exactly right, every plant selected for its spiritual symbolism and aesthetic perfection. It was beautiful, serene, and completely controlled. One year, a young monk named Thao was assigned to maintain the garden. He tended it carefully, following the detailed instructions left by previous gardeners. Pull any weeds immediately. Keep the paths clear. Maintain the precise arrangement. The garden must look exactly as it was designed to look. Then came a spring when something unexpected happened. A wildflower seed, blown by wind from outside the monastery walls, took root between two carefully placed stones. Thao noticed it when it was just a tiny sprout. According to his instructions, he should remove it immediately. It was not part of the design. It was a weed, an intruder, a disruption to perfection. But something made Thao hesitate. The little sprout seemed so determined, pushing up through the narrow gap between stones. He decided to leave it for one more day, then one more, then one more. Soon it grew into a small plant, then flowered. The flower was bright yellow, cheerful, completely different from the carefully chosen plants in the rest of the garden. The head monk noticed it during his morning walk. Thao prepared to be reprimanded, but the head monk just stood there, looking at the unexpected flower. "I've walked this garden for 30 years, he finally said. Every day, the same beauty, the same perfection. And today, for the first time in 30 years, I truly saw it. Because this little flower made me stop and look." He turned to Thao. "Keep it." Thao was surprised, but he kept the wildflower. And he noticed something interesting. People stopped more frequently at that spot in the garden. They would smile at the unexpected splash of yellow among the carefully chosen plants. The planned perfection was beautiful, but the unplanned surprise was delightful. The next year, more wildflowers appeared, their seeds spreading from the first. Thao checked with the head monk before making any decisions. "What brings joy?" the head monk asked. "Perfection or surprise?" Thao thought about this. "Both," he finally said, "but the surprise reminds us to notice the perfection. Without it, we take the beauty for granted." So Thao began a new practice. He maintained the careful design of the garden, but he also allowed some wildness. Where an unexpected plant appeared and brought beauty, he let it stay. Where it crowded out other plants or created genuine problems, he removed it. He learned to work with what appeared rather than only following the plan. The garden changed. It became less controlled but more alive. Less predictable but more interesting. Visitors who had walked through it many times found themselves noticing it anew. "It's different each time," they would say. "There's always something unexpected." One day, a senior monk from another monastery visited. He walked through the garden with a critical eye. "This is not proper," he said. A meditation garden should be controlled. Precisi. These wild elements are distracting. The head monk invited him to sit on a bench. Watch the other monks as they walk through, he said. They sat and observed. Monk after monk walked the garden paths. Most smiled. Many stopped to examine something they hadn't noticed before. A few laughed with delight at a particularly unexpected combination of planned and wild plants. Everyone was present, attentive, noticing. Now, the head monk said, "Imagine this garden was perfectly controlled. Every plant exactly as planned, every element predictable. How many of these monks would truly see it? How many would walk through on autopilot, seeing the same thing they saw yesterday and will see tomorrow? Not really present at all?" The visiting monk was quiet for a long time. "So you're saying the imperfection serves a purpose?" "I'm saying," the head monk replied, "that life is imperfect. Life brings unexpected elements. We can fight this reality and be miserable, or we can work with it and find joy. This garden teaches that lesson. The monks who maintain it learn to let go of control. The monks who walk through it learn to appreciate surprise. Both lessons are valuable." Years passed. The garden continued to evolve, each season bringing new combinations of planned and unplanned beauty. Thao grew old maintaining it. He taught younger monks his philosophy: honor the design, but don't be rigid about it. Work with what appears. Find the beauty in the unexpected. When Thao was very old, too frail to work in the garden anymore, he would sit on the bench and watch others tend it. One day, a young monk came to him, frustrated. "I don't know what to do," the young monk said. "A vine is growing that wasn't planted. It's beautiful, but it's not part of the plan. The old instructions say to remove all unplanned plants. But your practice was different. What should I do?" Thao smiled. "Does it bring beauty or harm?" "Beauty," the young monk admitted. "It's actually quite lovely." "Does it crowd out other plants or create problems?" "No. It seems to coexist peacefully." "Then you have your answer," Tao said. "The question isn't, is this what we planned? The question is, does this bring joy? Life will always offer you things you didn't plan for. The art is learning to distinguish between the unexpected gifts and the unexpected problems." The young monk thought about this. "But how do I know the difference?" "You pay attention," Thao said. "You watch. You notice. You don't make decisions based on rigid rules, but on present awareness. Each unexpected element is unique. Each requires its own consideration. That's what makes it an art, rather than just following instructions." When Thao died, they buried his ashes in the garden he had transformed. The next spring, a type of flower no one could identify grew at that spot. It was delicate, unusual, and utterly beautiful. No one knew where it came from or what it was called, but everyone agreed it belonged there. It was exactly the kind of unexpected gift Thao had taught them to appreciate. The garden continues to this day, still evolving, still surprising, still teaching. Monks come from other monasteries to see it. They expect to learn about garden design. Instead, they learn about life, about working with what appears, about finding joy in the unexpected, about the beauty that emerges when we stop trying to control everything and learn to dance with surprise. This teaching speaks to our desperate need for control and how it robs us of joy. We make plans. We have expectations. We want life to unfold exactly as we imagine it should. And then life does what life does. It brings unexpected elements. Things we didn't plan for. Changes we didn't choose. Surprises both pleasant and unpleasant. Our first instinct is usually to resist. This isn't what I planned. This isn't how it's supposed to be. We fight reality, trying to force life to conform to our expectations. And this fight creates misery. Not because the unexpected element is necessarily bad, but because we're in conflict with what is. Thou learned to work with what appeared, rather than only following the plan. This doesn't mean abandoning all planning or structure. The garden still had design, but the design was flexible enough to accommodate surprise. When something unexpected brought beauty, Thou welcomed it. When it created problems, he addressed it. But he didn't reject things simply for being unexpected. Think about how this applies to your own life. You make plans for your day, and then something unexpected happens. Your first response is probably frustration. This isn't what I planned. I didn't want this. You're in immediate conflict with reality. This conflict is suffering, even if the unexpected thing is neutral or even positive. What if you could meet the unexpected with curiosity instead of resistance? What if your first question was, "What is this?" rather than, "Why is this disrupting my plan?" You might discover, like the monks in the garden, that some of life's greatest joys come from what you didn't plan. The relationship that started when you weren't looking for one. The career opportunity that appeared when you had other plans. The detour that led you to discover something wonderful. The cancelled plan that created space for something better. How many of your best experiences came from letting go of your plan and working with what appeared? We waste so much energy fighting reality. Should be different. Shouldn't have happened. Not what I wanted. Not what I planned. All of this is resistance to what is. And that resistance is optional. It doesn't change what is. It just makes us miserable about what is. The visiting monk asked about the imperfections, thinking they were distractions. But the head monk showed him they were teachers. The unexpected elements made people present. They disrupted autopilot. They created opportunities for surprise and delight. The perfection was beautiful, but the imperfection made people notice the beauty. This is profound. Sometimes what we think is wrong with our lives is actually what keeps our lives interesting. The challenges that force us to grow, the surprises that wake us up from routine, the imperfections that make us pay attention. If everything went exactly according to plan, if life was perfectly controlled, we would sleepwalk through it. Tao's question was perfect. Does it bring beauty or harm? Not is it what I planned, but does it bring beauty? Some unexpected things bring harm. Those need to be addressed. But some bring beauty. Those need to be welcomed. And we can't know which is which if our only criteria is, did I plan this? When something unexpected happens today, pause before resisting. Ask Thou's question. Does this bring beauty or harm? Is this a gift I didn't recognize because it wasn't wrapped the way I expected? Is this an opportunity I'm rejecting because it's not what I planned? Life will always bring unexpected elements. Always. You can spend your whole life fighting this reality, trying to maintain perfect control, becoming increasingly frustrated as life refuses to conform to your plans. Or you can learn to work with what appears, to find the beauty in the unexpected, to see surprise as opportunity rather than disruption. The garden teaches that both planning and spontaneity have value. Both control and wildness contribute to beauty. The art is holding them in balance. Having structure but not rigidity. Making plans but not being enslaved by them. knowing what you want, but being open to what appears. This is the path to joy in an unpredictable life. Not fighting what is. Not demanding that everything conform to your expectations, but meeting each moment with curiosity and presence, asking what is this, instead of why isn't this what I wanted, finding the unexpected flowers among the carefully placed stones, discovering that some of life's greatest beauty comes from what you never could have planned. Your body continues to settle. Your mind continues to quiet. Let yourself be carried gently by these words. Rest as we move deeper into the night. The merchant who sold laughter. In a bustling market town in old China, there was a merchant named Lin who had the strangest business anyone had ever seen. He sold laughter. Not objects that might make you laugh. Not books of jokes or funny performances. Just laughter itself. His shop was small and simple. When customers entered, Lin would invite them to sit. Then he would ask, "When was the last time you laughed? Really laughed?" Most people couldn't remember. Life was serious. Work was stressful. There was always something to worry about. Laughter seemed frivolous, a luxury they couldn't afford. That, Lin would say gently, is exactly why you need what I sell. He would tell them a story, something absurd, or unexpected, or so perfectly observed that it caught them off guard, and they would laugh. Sometimes just a chuckle, sometimes so hard they cried. And then Lin would say, "There, that's what you bought." That moment of laughter. How do you feel? Most people felt lighter, younger, more alive. "How much do I owe you?" they would ask. "Whatever you think it was worth," Lin would say. Some people paid generously, others paid little. Lin didn't seem to care. He wasn't getting rich from his unusual business, but he seemed perfectly happy. The serious merchants in the market looked down on Lin. "He's not a real merchant," they would say. "He doesn't sell anything tangible. He doesn't accumulate wealth. He's wasting his time." But Lin's little shop was always full. People would come back again and again, needing what he sold, needing to remember how to laugh, needing permission to find joy in a world that felt increasingly heavy. One day, the wealthiest merchant in the market, a man named Joe, who owned 3 shops and had more money than he could spend, came to Lin's shop. Not as a customer, but as a curious observer. "I don't understand your business," Joe said bluntly. "You could be selling real goods, making real money. Instead, you waste your time with this. Laughter, nonsense." Lin smiled. "Sit," he invited. "Let me tell you something." Joe, intrigued despite himself, sat. "I used to be like you," Lin said. "I had a successful business. I sold rice and grain. I was prosperous. I worked hard and made money. And I was miserable. Every day felt like a burden. I forgot what it felt like to be happy." "So you gave up?" Joe asked. "No," Lin said. "I woke up. I realized that I was spending my entire life accumulating things I didn't need to impress people I didn't like, while forgetting to enjoy the actual experience of being alive. One day I laughed at something, really laughed, for the first time in years. And I remembered what I'd been missing. I remembered joy. So you started this shop?" "I started sharing what I'd rediscovered," Lin corrected. "I tell stories, share observations, help people remember how to laugh. And I found that this is worth more to me than all the money I used to make. But you can't pay for things with laughter, Joe pointed out. No, Lynn agreed. But you also can't buy joy with money. I've tried both. I'd rather have less money and more laughter than more money and no joy. Joe snorted. That's foolish. Money provides security. Does it? Lynn asked gently. You're the wealthiest man in the market. Are you secure, or are you constantly worried about losing your wealth? About competition? About making wrong decisions? Are you happy? Joe opened his mouth to say yes, then closed it. He wasn't happy. He hadn't been happy in years. He was successful and stressed and lonely and bitter. But he was rich, and that was supposed to be enough. Lynn told Joe a story then. A ridiculous story about a wealthy man so worried about thieves that he hired guards to protect his money, then hired more guards to watch the first guards, then built walls to protect everyone, until he was living in a fortress alone with his money, unable to enjoy any of it or spend any of it because he was too afraid of losing it. Joe didn't want to laugh. The story hit too close to home. But something about Lynn's delivery, about the absurdity of the image, broke through his resistance. He laughed. A real laugh, deep and genuine, surprising himself. When he stopped, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Lightness, release, a moment of pure, uncomplicated joy. That's what I sell, Lynn said simply. That feeling, the reminder that life can be light as well as heavy. That joy is available even in difficult circumstances. That laughter is not frivolous but essential. Joe left the shop confused. He had laughed, but he couldn't shake the feeling that Lynn was wasting his potential. A few weeks later, he returned. I've been thinking about what you said. Joe told Lynn about joy and money. And I've noticed something. I have everything I thought would make me happy, but I'm not happy. You have very little, and you're happy. I don't understand it. It's simple, Lynn said. You've been chasing having. I've chosen being. You're so focused on accumulating and protecting what you have that you're not present for your actual life. I'm present for mine. I notice what's funny. I share joy with people. I spend my days doing something that matters to me, even if it doesn't make me rich. But what happens when you're old and have no savings? Lynn shrugged. I'll be old and have no savings and a lifetime of laughter and connection and joy to remember. You'll be old and wealthy and will have spent your entire life worried and stressed and missing the pleasure of actually living. Which sounds better to you? Joe couldn't answer. He left, but he kept coming back. Each time, Lynn would tell him stories, make him laugh, remind him that joy was available if he chose to notice it. Gradually, Joe started to change. He began noticing funny things. He started sharing humor with his workers instead of just barking orders. He found himself smiling more. One day, Joe made a decision that shocked the entire market. He sold 2 of his 3 shops, keeping only 1. He used the money to live more simply and have more time. Time to walk through the market and notice things. Time to talk to people. Time to be present instead of constantly working. Lynn ruined you, other merchants said. You were wealthy and successful, and now you're throwing it away. But Joe smiled. Lynn didn't ruin me, he said. He saved me. I was wealthy and successful and miserable. Now I have enough and I'm happy. That seems like an improvement. Years later, when Lin was very old, the market threw him a celebration. Joe organized it. Hundreds of people came. All the people whose lives Lin had touched. All the people he had helped remember how to laugh. Lin stood there, looking at all the faces, and he was deeply moved. "I never sold anything important," he said. "I just reminded you of something you already had. The capacity for joy, the ability to laugh, the choice to notice lightness instead of only heaviness. You sold the most important thing." Zhou corrected him. "You sold us back to ourselves. You reminded us that we could be happy. That's worth more than all the rice and grain and goods in this entire market." When Lin died, peacefully and still smiling, they discovered he had almost no possessions. But his funeral was the largest the market had ever seen. Thousands came, and instead of being somber, as funerals usually were, people told stories and laughed and celebrated the life of a man who had spent his days selling joy. This story confronts our beliefs about what matters. We're taught that success means accumulation. More money, more possessions, more achievements. We chase these things, believing they'll make us happy. And like Zhou, we often discover they don't. We have everything we thought we wanted, and we're still miserable. Lin understood something revolutionary, that happiness is not about having, but about being. Not about accumulation, but about experience. Not about the future, but about the present. He chose to spend his days helping people laugh. Not because it made him rich, but because it brought genuine joy to himself and others. We spend so much of our lives working toward future happiness. When I have enough money, then I'll be happy. When I achieve this goal, then I'll relax. When I retire, then I'll enjoy life. But the future never comes. There's always another goal, another achievement needed, another milestone before we allow ourselves to be happy. Lin was happy now, not someday, not when he had enough. Now, each day, doing something that brought joy. Each interaction, sharing laughter. He wasn't waiting for permission to be happy. He had given himself that permission already. Think about Zhou's realization. He had everything society said should make him happy, and he was miserable. Lin had almost nothing society values, and he was joyful. This tells us something crucial about where happiness actually lives. It's not in the having, it's in the being, in the quality of our days, in what we actually do and experience and share. When you think about your own life, are you more like Zhou or Lin? Are you constantly working toward future happiness while missing present joy? Are you so focused on accumulating and achieving that you forget to notice whether you're actually enjoying your life? What would it mean to choose joy now instead of waiting for it to arrive when conditions are perfect? What would it mean to prioritize experiences over possessions, presence over achievement, laughter over accumulation? Lin's business seemed foolish to serious merchants. Selling laughter. How impractical. How frivolous. But his shop was always full. People needed what he offered. In a world increasingly focused on productivity and achievement and accumulation, people were starving for joy. Lin fed that hunger. What are you hungry for? Probably not more stuff. Probably not more achievements. Probably for what Lin offered. Lightness. Joy. Permission to laugh. The reminder that life can be light as well as heavy. That happiness is available now, not just someday in the future. Zhou's transformation is instructive. He didn't have to give up everything to find happiness. He just had to rebalance. Less work, more time. Less accumulation, more presence. Less focus on having, more focus on being. He went from having everything and being miserable to having enough and being happy. That shift didn't require giving up everything, just reevaluating what actually mattered. You might not be able to sell laughter like Lin, but you can make the same choice he made. The choice to prioritize joy, to notice what's funny, to share lightness, to be present for your actual life instead of always working towards some future version of life that will supposedly be better. Lin's legacy wasn't money or possessions. It was the thousands of people he helped remember how to laugh, the countless moments of joy he created, the reminder, spread person by person, that happiness is a choice available right now, that we don't have to wait, we don't have to earn it, we just have to notice it and choose it. What would change if you made joy a priority the way Lin did? Not the only priority, but a real one. If each day you looked for moments to laugh, things to appreciate, experiences to savor, if you measured your days not by what you accomplished but by whether you enjoyed them, if you chose being happy now over working toward happiness later. Lin's shop sold laughter, but what he really sold was permission. Permission to be happy now. Permission to choose joy even when life isn't perfect. Permission to value experience over accumulation. That permission is still available. You can give it to yourself right now. You don't need Lin's shop. You just need Lin's wisdom that joy is available in each moment, and choosing it is always more valuable than postponing it. Breathe naturally. Let the darkness hold you gently. Feel the weight of your body against the bed. There's nowhere else to be. Rest completely. The student who asked why. At a Zen monastery in Japan, there was a student named Kenji who drove his teachers slightly crazy with a single question. Whenever he was taught something, whenever a lesson was given, whenever wisdom was shared, Kenji would ask, "But why does this make us happy?" It wasn't that he was argumentative. He genuinely wanted to understand. But his teachers found the constant questioning exhausting. Just practice, they would say. Understanding comes through doing, not through asking. But Kenji kept asking. When told to sit in meditation, why does sitting still make us happy? When told to work in silence, why does quiet make us happy? When told to accept impermanence, why does accepting change make us happy? Finally, the head teacher, an old monk named Hakuin, called Kenji to his chamber. "Your questions are disruptive," Hakuin said, not unkindly. "But perhaps they reveal something important. Come, walk with me." They walked out into the monastery garden. It was early spring, and cherry blossoms were just beginning to open. Hakuin stopped beneath a cherry tree. "Why are these blossoms beautiful?" Hakuin asked. Kenji thought. "Because of their color, their shape, their delicate nature? Are those the reasons you find them beautiful?" Hakuin asked. "Or are you giving me reasons you think sound intelligent?" Kenji was quiet. Then he admitted, "I don't know why they're beautiful. They just are. Looking at them makes me happy." "Ah," Hakuin said. "And do you need to know why in order to experience that happiness?" "No," Kenji said slowly. "The happiness is there whether I understand it or not." Hakuin plucked a blossom and held it out. "Tell me, does this blossom wonder why it's blooming? Does it question its own beauty? Does it need to understand happiness in order to be beautiful?" "No," Kenji said. "It just blooms. And yet, Hakuin continued, "You insist on understanding before you can be happy. The blossom teaches a different way. It doesn't understand. It just is. And in that simple being, it creates joy for everyone who sees it." Kenji stood there, looking at the blossom in Hakuin's hand. "So you're saying I should stop asking questions?" "No," Hakuin said. "I'm saying notice that your happiness isn't waiting for understanding. It's available right now. Before you understand anything, look at these blossoms. Do you feel joy?" "Yes," Kenji admitted. "Did you need to understand why in order to feel it?" "No." "Then perhaps," Hakuin suggested, "the question isn't, why does this make us happy? The question is, am I allowing myself to feel the happiness that's already here?" From that day on, Kenji still asked questions, but he added a new practice. Before asking why something should make him happy, he would pause and notice whether he was already experiencing happiness. And he discovered something surprising. Often, he was happy before he understood why. The understanding came after, or sometimes not at all. But the happiness was there first. He would sit in meditation, and instead of wondering why sitting still should make him peaceful, he would notice that he already felt peaceful. He would work in silence, and instead of questioning why quiet should bring contentment, he would notice that he already felt content. The happiness preceded the understanding. The joy came before the reasons. One day, a new student arrived at the monastery. This student was like Kenji had been, full of questions, needing to understand everything before accepting it. Kenji found himself amused, seeing his former self in this newcomer. "Why does bowing make us humble?" the new student asked during a teaching. Before the teacher could answer, Kenji spoke up. "Have you tried bowing?" "Well, yes," the new student said, "but I don't understand why." "When you bowed," Kenji interrupted gently, "how did you feel?" The student thought about this. "Actually, I felt peaceful, respectful, connected to something larger than myself." "So you experienced the benefit before understanding the reason?" Kenji asked. Yes, I suppose I did." "Then perhaps," Kenji suggested, "the understanding will come. Or perhaps it won't. But the benefit is already yours. The happiness is already present. We don't need to understand joy in order to experience it." The new student looked confused but intrigued. Kenji smiled, remembering his own confusion, his own insistence on understanding. "Come," he said. "The cherry blossoms are blooming. Let me show you something." He brought the student to the same cherry tree where Hakuin had taught him. "Tell me," Kenji said, "why are these blossoms beautiful?" The student opened his mouth to give a reasoned answer, then stopped. "I don't know," he finally said. "Do you experience their beauty?" "Yes." "Do you feel joy looking at them?" "Yes." "Then you have everything you need," Kenji said. "The why can come later, or never. The happiness is already here." Years later, when Kenji himself became a teacher, students would ask him about the nature of happiness. His answer was always the same. Stop asking why and notice whether. Don't ask why this should make you happy. Notice whether you are happy. Often, you'll discover the happiness was there all along, waiting for you to stop questioning it and start experiencing it. He would bring students to the cherry tree, now old and gnarled, but still blooming each spring. "The tree doesn't understand beauty," he would say. "It just blooms. The blossom doesn't question its purpose. It just opens. And in that simple being, without understanding, without questioning, there is perfect joy. For the tree, for the blossom, and for everyone who sees it. When Kenji died, they planted his ashes beneath that cherry tree. The next spring, it bloomed more abundantly than it had in years. Students would sit beneath it, and some would wonder why this particular tree brought such peace. Others would simply sit and enjoy the peace without needing to understand it. Both approaches had value, but Kenji had learned and taught that happiness doesn't wait for understanding. It's available now, before we know why, before we figure it out, before we understand anything at all. This teaching addresses our need to understand everything before we can enjoy it. We're analytical creatures. We want to know why. We want it to make sense. We want to understand the mechanism before we'll accept the benefit. And this need for understanding often delays our happiness. Kenji's question, "Why does this make us happy?" is one we ask constantly, even if not aloud. Why should I be grateful for what I have? Why should simple things bring joy? Why should being present matter? We want reasons, explanations, understanding. And while we wait for satisfactory answers, we miss the actual experience of happiness. The cherry blossom doesn't understand its beauty. It doesn't know why it blooms. It doesn't question whether blooming is worthwhile or meaningful. It just blooms. And in that simple blooming, it creates joy. Not because it understands joy, but because it simply is what it is, fully and without question. What if you could approach your life this way, not needing to understand why something brings happiness before you allow yourself to feel happy, not requiring reasons before you permit yourself joy, just noticing when happiness is present and allowing yourself to experience it. Think about how often you delay happiness pending understanding. You're having a good day, and then you start questioning it. Why am I happy? This doesn't make sense. I shouldn't be happy. I still have problems. And in that questioning, you pull yourself out of the happiness. You can't just be happy. You have to understand it, justify it, explain it. Or someone gives you a compliment, and instead of simply receiving it and feeling good, you question it. Why are they saying that? They must want something. They're just being polite. You can't accept the joy of being appreciated because you need to understand the motivation behind it. Or you're enjoying a simple moment, a good meal, a beautiful sunset, a comfortable bed, and your mind jumps in. This is silly. I shouldn't need these small things to be happy. I should be working toward bigger goals. You can't just enjoy the moment because you don't understand why it should be enough. Hakuin's question is perfect. Do you need to know why in order to experience that happiness? The answer is no. The happiness exists independently of your understanding of it. The joy is available whether you comprehend its source or not. This doesn't mean we should never question or seek understanding. Understanding has value, but it shouldn't be a prerequisite for happiness. We can experience joy now and understand it later, or never. The experiencing is what matters. Kenji discovered that when he paused before questioning, he often found he was already happy. The meditation had already brought peace. The silence had already brought contentment. The practice had already created the benefit. His questions about why weren't necessary for the benefit to occur. They were just keeping him from noticing the benefit that was already present. What would happen if you tried this practice? Before asking why something should make you happy, pause and notice whether you're already experiencing some happiness. You might discover, like Kenji, that the happiness is there first. The questions come after, and the questions are optional. But the happiness is real. When you're with someone you love, you don't need to understand why you love them in order to feel the love. When you're laughing at something funny, you don't need to analyze the humor in order to enjoy laughing. When you're comfortable and safe, you don't need to understand why comfort and safety feel good in order to appreciate them. The cherry blossom blooms without understanding. It creates beauty without comprehension. It brings joy without analysis. And in that simple being, it teaches everything we need to know about happiness. That it doesn't require understanding. It doesn't need justification. It doesn't wait for reasons. It just is. Available. Present. Real. You can be happy before you understand why. You can experience joy before you figure it out. You can allow yourself contentment before you have good reasons for it. The happiness doesn't need your permission or your understanding. It's already here. The only question is whether you're present enough to notice it. Notice how quiet everything has become. Let your thoughts drift away like clouds. Your mind is settling into rest. Nothing needs your attention now. The festival of broken things. In a small town in Tibet, there was a festival unlike any other. Once a year, on the first day of spring, the townspeople would gather in the central square and bring their broken things. Cracked pottery, torn clothing, furniture with missing pieces, tools that no longer worked properly. They would pile all these broken, useless items in the center of the square. Then they would celebrate. Visitors to the town found this baffling. Why celebrate brokenness? Why make a festival of failure and damage? But the townspeople understood something deeper. The festival had begun generations earlier, started by a woman named Dolma, who had experienced terrible loss. Her house had burned down. Her husband had died young. Her children had moved far away. Everything she had built seemed broken beyond repair. She was drowning in grief, unable to see any path forward. One day, sitting among the ashes of her home, she found a cracked bowl that had somehow survived the fire. It was broken, useless, should have been thrown away. But something made her keep it. She looked at the crack, the way the pieces no longer fit perfectly together, and she thought, "This bowl and I are the same." Then she had an idea. She repaired the bowl using a traditional technique called kintsugi, filling the cracks with a mixture containing gold dust. The repair made the crack visible, even highlighted it, turning the break into a golden seam. The bowl was no longer perfect, but it was beautiful in a new way. More beautiful, Dolma thought, than it had been before it broke. She started doing this with other broken things. Each repair became an art, each crack a golden opportunity. And she found that as she repaired these objects, something in herself was also being repaired. Not made perfect again, not returned to how it was before, but transformed into something new, something that acknowledged the breaking and found beauty in the mending. She began teaching others this art, not just the technique, but the philosophy behind it. That broken things aren't worthless. That cracks tell a story. That repair can create new beauty. That transformation doesn't mean erasing damage, but incorporating it into something new. The festival grew from Dolma's teaching. Each year, people would bring their broken things. Some would be repaired with golden seams, transformed into art. Others would be honored and then let go, released without shame or regret. The festival became a celebration not of perfection, but of resilience, not of things that never break, but of the ability to continue after breaking. A traveling scholar visited the town during one festival. He watched, fascinated and confused, as people laughed and celebrated while displaying their broken possessions, their failures, their losses. "I don't understand," he said to an old woman who was carefully applying gold to a cracked teapot. "Why celebrate brokenness? Isn't brokenness something to hide? To be ashamed of?" The old woman smiled. "Only if you believe perfection is the goal. But perfection is impossible and temporary. Everything breaks eventually. Everything ages and cracks and fails. If we can only find beauty in perfection, we live in constant disappointment." She held up the teapot. "This was my mother's. I broke it when I was young, and I was devastated. It had been perfect, and I had ruined it. I hid the pieces in shame for years. Then I learned kintsugi. I learned that the breaking was part of its story, not the end of its story. Now look at it. These golden cracks are its history. They make it unique. They make it precious in a way it never was when it was just another perfect teapot." The scholar sat down beside her. "So you're saying brokenness adds value?" "I'm saying brokenness is inevitable, and how we respond to it determines whether it destroys us or transforms us. We break. All of us. Hearts break. Dreams break. Bodies break. Plans break. We can hide that brokenness and pretend we're still perfect. Or we can acknowledge it, honor it, and find ways to create beauty from the breaking." She gestured around the square, where people were sharing stories of loss and repair, of breaking and rebuilding. "This festival reminds us that we're not alone in our brokenness. Everyone here has broken things. Everyone has experienced loss. There's no shame in it. The shame would be in pretending we're perfect when we're all beautifully, bravely broken and repaired." The scholar stayed for the entire festival. He watched as a man showed a tool his grandfather had owned, broken and mended many times, each repair visible and honored. He heard a woman tell the story of her garden that had been destroyed by a storm and then replanted, now more beautiful than before because she had learned from the loss. He saw children bringing broken toys, not sad but excited, eager to see how they might be transformed. He watched elderly people sharing the breaks they'd survived, injuries, losses, disappointments with neither shame nor pride, just honest acknowledgement. On the last day of the festival, the scholar asked to address the crowd. "I came here thinking brokenness was something to fix or hide," he said. "You've taught me it's something to honor and transform. In my culture, we display only our achievements and hide our failures. We show only our strengths and hide our wounds. We pretend to be perfect and secretly feel inadequate because perfection is impossible." He paused, emotional. "But here, you've created something remarkable, a community where brokenness is expected, where repair is celebrated, where the cracks are filled with gold instead of shame. You've made me realize that I've been broken for years and hiding it, thinking if people knew, they would see me as weak. But you've shown me that the breaking and the mending are where true strength lives." After the festival, the scholar returned to his city and started a similar tradition. It grew slowly, people hesitant at first to share their brokenness. But gradually, they learned what the Tibetan town had always known, that everyone is broken, everyone is repaired, and there is profound beauty in acknowledging both. Years later, When the old woman who had repaired her mother's teapot was dying, people gathered around her. She held the teapot, running her fingers over the golden cracks. "My life has been like this teapot," she said, "broken many times, repaired many times. Not perfect, but beautiful because of the breaks, not despite them. The golden seams are my story. They're what make me who I am." After she died, the teapot was placed in the town's small museum, a reminder of Dolma's original vision and the tradition she had inspired. The cracks gleamed gold, beautiful and honest, telling a story of breaking and becoming, of loss and transformation, of the profound truth that nothing perfect has ever been truly beautiful, because perfection has no story, no depth, no golden seams of repair. This teaching offers a radically different way of viewing imperfection and brokenness. We live in a culture obsessed with perfection. Perfect bodies, perfect relationships, perfect careers, perfect lives. And because perfection is impossible, we live in constant shame about our brokenness, our failures, our cracks. But the festival teaches something profound. Brokenness is universal and inevitable. Everything breaks. Everyone breaks. The question isn't whether you'll break, but how you'll respond when you do. Will you hide the breaking in shame, or will you repair it with gold? Acknowledging the crack, honoring the story, creating new beauty from the breaking. Think about your own life. What breaks have you experienced? Heartbreak, failure, loss, disappointment, illness, betrayal. These breaks are real. They hurt, but they're also part of your story. They're what make you unique. They're the golden seams that give your life depth and character. We hide our brokenness because we think it makes us less valuable, less worthy, less lovable. We pretend to be perfect on social media while secretly feeling inadequate. We smile and say we're fine while carrying hidden wounds. We're exhausted from maintaining the illusion of perfection when everyone around us is doing the exact same thing. What if we could have a festival of broken things in our own lives? Not literally, but metaphorically. What if we could acknowledge our breaks without shame, share our repairs without pride, recognize that the cracks, filled with gold, are what make us beautiful? The kintsugi technique is instructive. It doesn't hide the crack. It highlights it. It fills it with gold, making it visible and beautiful. This is the opposite of how we usually handle brokenness. We try to hide it, pretend it never happened, return to how things were before. But kintsugi says, the breaking happened. It's part of the story now. Let's honor it and create new beauty from it. When a relationship breaks and heals, the healing can create deeper intimacy than existed before if both people are willing to acknowledge the break and work with it. When a dream breaks and we build a new one, it can be richer because it's informed by the loss. When our body breaks through illness or injury and recovers, we can have a deeper appreciation for health than we had when we took it for granted. The golden seams are the wisdom that comes from suffering, the compassion that comes from being hurt, the strength that comes from surviving, the depth that comes from loss. These aren't consolation prizes for breaking. They're the transformation that breaking makes possible. But we have to acknowledge the breaking first. We can't fill the cracks with gold if we're pretending they don't exist. We can't create beauty from brokenness if we're ashamed of being broken. We can't transform if we're invested in the illusion of perfection. The festival created community through shared brokenness. Everyone brought their broken things. Everyone acknowledged their failures and losses. And in that acknowledgement, they found connection. They discovered they weren't alone. They learned that brokenness doesn't make you defective. It makes you human. What would it mean to create that kind of community in your own life? To share your breaks with people you trust? To acknowledge your imperfections without shame? To find the beauty in your cracks instead of hiding them? You are not perfect. You will break. You probably already have. Many times. This is not a failure. This is being alive. The question is whether you'll spend your life hiding your cracks and pretending to be perfect, exhausting yourself with the charade, or whether you'll fill your cracks with gold and let them tell your story. You are beautifully broken, bravely repaired. The golden seams of your repairs are what make you precious, not your perfection, which never existed anyway, not your ability to avoid breaking, which is impossible, but your resilience, your capacity to break and continue, your willingness to transform brokenness into beauty. This is what the festival celebrates. Not the breaking itself, which is often painful, but the continuing, the repairing, the creating of new beauty from the cracks, the honoring of the story instead of hiding it, the golden seams that say, yes, I broke, and yes, I'm still here, still beautiful, still valuable, maybe more so because of the breaking, not despite it. Your breathing continues, soft and steady. Feel yourself sinking deeper into peace. Let sleep come as gently as breath. One more story waits, then rest. The last story, the child who collected moments. In a village by the sea, there lived a child named May who had a strange hobby. While other children collected shells or stones or toys, May collected moments. She would stop in the middle of playing and close her eyes, as if capturing something invisible. When asked what she was doing, she would say, "I'm keeping this." "Keeping what?" the adults would ask. "This happiness." May would say simply, "This moment." The adults found this charming but odd. Moments couldn't be collected. They happened and passed. What was the point of trying to keep them? But May was convinced that her collection was real and valuable. She had a small notebook where she would write descriptions of the moments she was keeping. The way sun felt on my face this morning, the sound of my mother's laugh, the taste of the first strawberry of summer, the feeling of my grandfather's hand holding mine. As she grew older, other children grew out of their collections. Shells were discarded. Toys were outgrown. But May continued adding to her collection of moments. In school, she would occasionally pause and close her eyes. "What are you doing?" teachers would ask. "Keeping this," May would say. The way light comes through the window, the sound of chalk on the board, the feeling of solving a difficult problem. Some teachers thought she was strange. Others recognized something wise in the practice, but couldn't quite articulate what it was. When May was a young woman, her village experienced hard times. The fishing was poor. Storms damaged houses. People grew worried and stressed. The joy seemed to drain from the village. Everyone focused on problems, on what was going wrong, on fears about the future. May noticed that her collection had become more valuable during this difficult time. When she felt worried or sad, she would open her notebook and read through her collected moments. The way snow looked falling into the ocean. My father teaching me to tie knots. The first time I made my friend laugh so hard she cried. Reading these moments didn't solve any problems. The fishing was still poor. The houses still needed repair. But the memories reminded her that life had been good before and would be good again. That even during hard times, there were still moments worth keeping. That joy was still available if she paid attention. She started sharing her collection with others. When someone was feeling low, she would read them moments from her notebook. Not her moments necessarily, but moments that might remind them of their own. Remember what it feels like when you first wake up and realize it's your day off? Remember the taste of your grandmother's soup? Remember how your children smelled when they were babies? People would close their eyes, remembering, and for a moment, they would feel that happiness again, even though the actual moment was long past. May's collection was working. She had kept the happiness, and now she could share it. One day, an old woman who had recently lost her husband came to May. "Everyone tells me to move on," the old woman said, "to let go, to stop dwelling in the past. But all my happy moments were with him. If I let go of the past, I lose the happiness." May understood. "You don't have to let go of the happiness," she said gently. "You just have to understand that happiness exists in two times. The moment when it happens, and every moment after when you choose to remember it. Your husband is gone, and that's a tremendous loss. But the happiness you shared, that's yours forever. He gave you that. No one can take it away unless you refuse to remember." The old woman started crying, but they were different tears than she'd been crying before. "I can keep the moments, you already have them," May said. "Every moment of joy you experienced is still yours. In your memory, those moments are eternal. They happened, and because they happened, they always exist. You can visit them whenever you want." The old woman started her own notebook after that. She filled it with moments from her marriage, the first time they met, their wedding day. Small everyday moments that had seemed insignificant at the time, but now glowed with meaning. She wasn't living in the past. She was honoring it, keeping it, drawing strength from it. May's practice spread through the village. People started their own collections of moments. Parents with young children were especially moved by it. "My children are growing so fast," they would say. "I'm afraid I'll forget these precious days." "You won't forget if you keep them," May would say. Pause right now. Notice the miracle of this moment. Your child at exactly this age, exactly who they are right now. Keep it. Write it down. When they're grown, you'll have this moment forever. One day, May was teaching a young mother this practice. The mother was frazzled, overwhelmed, trying to do too many things at once. Her baby was crying. Her toddler was demanding attention. Dinner was burning on the stove. "This is not a moment worth keeping," the mother said bitterly. "This is chaos." May smiled. "Is it? Or is it life? Your children need you because you matter to them. Your house is messy because it's lived in. You're exhausted because you're caring for people you love. Look closer. Find the moment inside the chaos." The mother stopped rushing. She looked at her crying baby. Really looked. And she saw past the crying to the perfect small fingers. The way the baby's whole body trusted her to make things better. The absolute miracle of this tiny human who hadn't existed a year ago. "There," May said softly. "Keep that. Not the crying, the trust, the love, the miracle." The mother started crying herself, but she was smiling too. She understood. Even in difficult moments, there was something worth keeping. something precious that would be gone too soon. When May was very old, her notebooks filled dozens of volumes, thousands of moments, carefully kept. People would visit her and ask to hear moments from her collection. She would read them random entries, and people would recognize their own lives in her words. The universality of small joys, the preciousness of ordinary moments, the way happiness happens constantly in tiny increments if we pay attention. On her last day, May's grandchildren gathered around her. "Tell us your favorite moment," they asked. May thought for a long time. "This one," she finally said. "This one." They looked around. She was dying. How could this be her favorite moment? "Right now," May said. "My whole family around me, the love in this room, the knowledge that I've lived fully, loved deeply, kept all the moments worth keeping, the feeling of completion, the peace of knowing I was present for my own life." She smiled. "This moment, right now, I'm keeping this." And she closed her eyes, keeping her final moment, and slipped peacefully away. At her funeral, instead of flowers, people brought notebooks. They shared moments they had kept because of May's teaching. Thousands of moments. Read aloud. A celebration of ordinary joy, of life fully noticed, of happiness collected and kept and shared. One of her granddaughters, reading from May's very first notebook, found the entry from when May was just 5 years old. "Today, I learned something important. Happiness doesn't last. The feeling goes away. But if I pay attention and really notice when I'm happy, I can keep it forever in my memory. I can make a collection. Then I'll always be rich, even if I have nothing else." At 5 years old, May had understood what many never learn. That wealth isn't in possessions but in experience. That joy is happening constantly in small ways. That paying attention is how we keep happiness. That memory is a treasure box we can fill with precious moments if we choose to notice them. The practice continues. In that village by the sea, children still learn to collect moments, to pause in the middle of playing and close their eyes and keep the happiness. They grow up understanding that their life is happening right now, in these small, ordinary moments, and that paying attention is how they make sure they don't miss it. They understand that when hard times come, their collection will sustain them. That memory is a refuge and a treasure. That every moment of joy they keep is wealth that can never be taken away. They understand what May taught, that happiness is not something you wait for in the future. It's something you notice and keep in the present, moment by moment, building a collection that will enrich your entire life. This final story brings everything together. May understood the essential truth about happiness. It's available now, in this moment, if we pay attention. Her collection wasn't magic or fantasy. It was simply the practice of noticing joy when it happens and honoring it enough to remember it. We move through our lives so quickly, so distracted, that most of our moments vanish unnoticed. We're physically present, but mentally absent. We're with our children, but thinking about work. We're eating, but not tasting. We're experiencing beauty, but not seeing it. We're living, but we're not keeping the moments. We're letting our lives pass by unnoticed. May's practice was presence. When something good happened, she paused. She noticed. She paid attention. She kept the moment, not just experiencing it, but truly seeing it, honoring it, embedding it in memory as something precious. This is not living in the past. It's the opposite. It's being so present for your life as it's happening that you create memories worth revisiting. It's noticing the moment while you're in it so thoroughly that it becomes yours forever. Think about your own life. What moments are you missing because you're not paying attention? Your child said something funny, but you were on your phone. Your partner smiled at you, but you were thinking about something else. The sunset was beautiful, but you were scrolling through social media. The coffee was perfect, but you drank it while working and didn't taste it. These moments are your life. They're happening right now. And if you don't notice them, if you don't keep them, they're gone. Not just from the present, but from memory too. You can't remember what you never noticed in the first place. But when you practice May's art of keeping moments, everything changes. You pause in the middle of an ordinary day and notice, I'm happy right now. This moment is good. Keep this, and you embed it in memory. Not just the fact of it, but the feeling of it. The quality of light, the sound of laughter, the warmth of connection, the taste of sweetness, whatever it is that makes this moment precious. Then, when hard times come, you have your collection. You have proof that life has been good. You have moments to revisit that remind you that joy is possible, that happiness is real, that good things happen and will happen again. Your collection becomes a refuge, a treasure, a reminder of why life is worth living even when it's difficult. And you also discover, like May taught the frazzled mother, that even difficult moments contain something worth keeping. Not the difficulty itself necessarily, but something within it. The trust in the crying baby's eyes, the strength you discovered in yourself, the compassion someone showed you, the unexpected beauty that appeared in the chaos. Every moment, even the hard ones, contains something. The question is whether you're present enough to find it and keep it. Right now, as you listen to these words, what's happening? Are you comfortable? Are you safe? Are you breathing easily? Is there any small pleasure available in this moment? The softness of your pillow? The quietness of night? The fact that you're resting? These are not small things. These are your life. Right now. Happening. Available to be kept. May's final moment was her favorite because she was completely present for it. Not wishing it was different. Not afraid of what came next. Just fully here. Noticing the love, feeling the peace, keeping the moment even as it happened. She lived her entire life this way, collecting moments of joy, building a treasure that no difficulty could diminish. You can start your own collection right now. This moment, notice something good about it, something pleasant or beautiful or touching or simply okay. Keep it. This is what happiness actually is. Not some future state of perfection. Not achievement or success or approval. Just this. This moment, noticed and kept. This simple practice, repeated day after day, builds a life of richness that has nothing to do with money and everything to do with presence. Keep this moment, and the next, and the next. Build your collection. Fill your treasure box with noticed joys. When you're old, you'll be like May, rich beyond measure, not because you had everything, but because you noticed everything. Because you were present for your own life. Because you kept the moments. Because you understood that happiness isn't something you find in the future. It's something you notice and keep in the present, moment by precious moment, until your collection is full and your life is complete. We have journeyed together tonight through 20 stories of joy and happiness. we have learned that true contentment is not found in achievement or possession, but in presence and attention. We have discovered that laughter matters, that simple pleasures count, that broken things can become beautiful, that even difficult times contain moments worth keeping. As you drift into sleep now, let these teachings settle into your heart. You do not need to remember every story. You do not need to do anything with what you've heard. Just let it work on you gently, changing you in ways you might not even notice until tomorrow. When you find yourself smiling at something small, or pausing to notice something beautiful, or feeling grateful for something ordinary. Tomorrow when you wake, you may see things slightly differently. You may notice joys you previously overlooked. You may find yourself choosing presence over productivity, appreciation over achievement, being over having. This is the work of these ancient teachings, transforming us gently from within. If you found peace in tonight's journey, please consider subscribing to this channel so others can find these teachings too. A like helps this work continue and reach those who need exactly what you found here tonight. Sleep deeply now. Wake gently. May you collect many beautiful moments tomorrow. May you notice the joys that are always available. May you find that happiness was never hiding in the future. It was always here, waiting for you to simply notice it. Good night, dear friend. Rest well.